Captain's Log Supplemental.
Hey Jeremy, you know those race cars you're busy building?
Yeah, I do. I
You,
got one
you
that I'm looking at every day.
you know what I don't see you working on?
You don't see me working on the amazing Sentinel system yet.
That's true. It would take all of 10 minutes for you to have one.
And it's very quick and easy to install.
It is. It is. And we could watch you when we are not at the race with you and see how you're doing. And then we can call you up when you get out of the car and tell you everything you did wrong.
And I love that because so many years I've been driving and not been able to see what I'm doing.
I know.
And now we can.
I know. You know what I'd like to do with the video? My most favorite thing is I take the video and I load it on YouTube and then I send it to my coach and say, look at 26 minutes and 17 seconds. Look at this one lap and tell me what I can do better. And every single time, you know what they say?
Everything.
Exactly. Precisely. So with the Sentinel system, you get instantaneous feedback plus useful feedback that unfortunately is accurate for my driving.
I think it's accurate for all of our driving.
Pretty much. Yeah, that's probably true. Yep. But you need to get one in your car, sir.
Yes, I do. And with the discount code that you're going to tell everybody, they can save 10% on this awesome system.
Yep. Trouble free. I haven't had an issue getting video every time we've gone out with the Sentinel. It's always worked. Can't say the same for some of the other systems we've tried. So I don't know. It's on the podcast notes down there. Don't do it while you're driving, though. We like to have our listeners live. It's good.
From the great halls of their house, there are assembled three who hope to one day be the world's greatest driving heroes. Created from the cosmic legends of the universe comes our team captain, the Vision, Bill Fisher, and their soon-to-be Wonder Woman, Vicki Fisher, and our Captain Marvel and head flight trainee, Jennifer Skripchuk. Their mission: to fight injustice, share what is right and wrong, to get you out of your house and come out racing with them and serve all mankind. They are the Garage Heroes in Training Team.
Welcome to the Garage Heroes and Training Podcast. I'm the only host on this episode. My name is Bill. I would say who else is hosting, but since I'm the only one here, I don't get to say that this time. Anyway, we have a guest at a listener request guest / our first ever listener bribed guest. We were given racing stuff and offered in return, because they wouldn't take anything else, offered in return that we could perhaps do a request episode. It could be a Dominating with Dawson topic, or it could be a regular episode topic, or it could be a guest. And the quick response through the DM field was, I want to talk to, I'm not saying it yet, but he is the national champion for GridLife and Club TR, I believe, Evan McLaren. Welcome to the podcast, Evan.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for having me on.
So how's it feel to be champion, man?
I don't quite know yet. I don't think it's quite sunk in yet. It's definitely a good feeling, but maybe it's not exactly what I expected it to be. I think kind of my last event ended it a little bit on a sour note, so maybe that kind of spoiled it for me, but we can probably get into that a little bit later.
Which we definitely will. And, so most of the jokes that are coming to mind will get me canceled. So I'm going to be quiet about the, what were your expectations going into winning a national championship? And, the classic joke in high school was always strippers and blow. But so what, do I have to edit that out? The peanut gallery. I said it anyway. Oh, I didn't. Inside thought versus extra, whatever. All right. So I'm getting the peanut gallery in the background going, you can't say that. Whatever.
Explicit rating.
That's right. I'll probably have to edit my own podcast. I've never had to edit myself before, but that's okay. Anyway, sir, I've done a bunch of these intros. If you've listened to the podcast or anyone listening to the podcast, you will know I've done a bunch of these intros, largely because no one else on the team will do them and I get stuck doing them. It's not because I'm good at them. So what did I miss? What did I miss, Aaron?
Um, Not really much, to be honest with you. I mean, it's been doing Club TR for the past, I guess, 3 years now. Haven't really been even involved in motorsports much longer than that. So there's not really much else to tell.
You're one of those people we hate that starts off and does well after 2 or 3 years. Okay, all right, that's fine. That's fine. Well, just in case people aren't familiar with Club TR, because there may be some non-grid life people there. Hopefully, there's some grid life people there. Hello, grid life people. Hello, non-grid life people. Perhaps we should go into what Club TR is because I can't think of anything funny. I know what it stands for. What's Club TR?
So the TR stands for Track Rat. It was kind of a class created to give your, common track rat slash HBDE cars a place to play in like a time attack competition format within grid life where, previously they didn't really have anywhere that they fit well. So you have a bunch of, you know, basic modified cars. I mean, you got a ton of, FRS, PRZ, K-swap Hondas, stuff like that, that really didn't have a home in the real life competition format previously. So, we'd either be stuck in like, you know, track mod or something insane, based on, whatever like silly interior rules we'd be subjected to or whatever, but then we'd be, grossly outmatched in power.
Right.
So, a few of us have tried to compete in street class with like, a built naturally aspirated motor and like a front wheel drive Honda. And it's really hard to make a car like that competitive. So it was great that, Adam Jabay, he always brags about how he came up with this class on a ladder at work one day. You know what I mean? Just with him and, Abram was just, brainstorming and came up with this, probably in my opinion, the best class in grid life, but I might be a little biased, but it just really kind of encompassed a large span of different cars that just easily slot in. I mean, anything like from like a NASA ST5 or ST or TT5, TT4 class
Mhm.
slot in really well. Somebody that would have like a fairly stock or lightly modified or even engine swapped S2000 or FRS BRZ, like I mentioned. There's a lot of stuff that it's pretty much a catch-all, and the rules are loose enough to where we have the freedom to kind of build how we would like within a certain few parameters. But otherwise, it's mostly a min weight class. There's some things based on different engines and displacements allowed and stuff like that, but for the most part it's pretty simple, but like loose and open enough that it brings a lot of cars in. It just kind of gives everybody a place to play, but we're also very tight. The parity is really close, like within
Yeah.
like a tenth of a second most of the time for the top three or five of us.
Well, I think like the rest of Grid Life that what Adam originally built may have sound like a simple little thing, but now it's infested with sharks and aliens. So
That's
it just seems to be getting harder and harder. Like when we first started talking to the friends over at Grid Life, and I began to be interested in it and somewhat stalking it from a distance in YouTube land. I had this like, bucket list goals of like I had like 3 goals that I wanted to do, and one was to be like middle GLTC.
uh
And it's still a goal, except that my goal now would put me like DFL GLTC if I was at the same level of performance that I was aiming for before. So I'm sitting there going, what did I sign myself up into? It just keeps moving.
the scale just constantly slides, doesn't it? It just doesn't
Yeah.
end.
And now, if you guys would just stop getting better, I'd have a chance at catching you. But
Right.
the gap is getting huge. So I'm not sure it's 100% accurate. I actually think it's not, but not being fully versed in all the rules of grid life, I've heard it said that TR is similar to a GLTC or almost like a close to GLTC with some minor tweaks. Is that accurate? Just to kind of give people familiarity with GLTC, maybe where TR would rate.
Sort of, as far as like pace of the pointy end, we're usually pretty similar in lap times.
Mm,
The past couple of years, because of the level of build and obviously the drivers in the paddock also just getting faster and faster, TR has got at least a second or two faster a lap than GLTC, depending on the track.
mhm.
I should say it would probably be about a solid second. Like Mid Ohio, we were um, almost a full second. PittRace, we were pretty close. Um,
It's a big track to be close to.
yeah, it really is, and I mean, that track's very technical and seems pretty grip dependent, and doesn't seem as straight line power. Um, what's the word I'm searching for?
Yeah, it's
Rewarding
no.
as I originally expected it to be.
Hmm.
But anyway, that's a whole tangent. That track's awesome, by the way. I really have to go back there.
It's our favorite.
Yeah, I can see why, and it is. I think it's now my favorite too. It's taken my top three for sure.
Oh, what's the other
Um,
two while we're here?
Mid Ohio Lime Rock.
Oh, nice. That's a
Yeah,
variety of tracks you got there.
I love like the natural terrain, elevation change, technical stuff. And all three of those tracks really kind of check those boxes. Um,
So I hear my listeners in the background saying, "What about VIR?"
I have yet to be there. That's a
Okay,
bucket list for me at this point, and
okay.
yeah, I just haven't gotten there yet. So I haven't been to the Glen.
The Glen. Okay, that
Um,
was next on the list. Road Atlanta.
yeah, Road Atlanta now. It's a little bit. I mean, it's not super far, but it's kind of.
It's outside the circle.
Um, yeah, I'm East Coast, Southeast Pennsylvania, so I'm closest to NJMP.
Northeast Pennsylvania. We could be
Yeah,
brothers.
there you go.
Except everybody keeps forgetting that Pennsylvania is pretty damn big.
Yeah, right. 6 hours from one side to the other, basically.
They're like, oh, it's in Pennsylvania. How hard is Pit Race for you to get to? I'm like 6.5 hours. And if I'm towing, it could get worse.
Right.
We just need a zipper. Like if we could just have a zipper that, right before we start to tow, we zip up like the center of Pennsylvania just for like 10 minutes. That's all I need. Boom, right over Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Easy.
And
No
yeah,
problem.
Turnpike could just, cut the tolls in half and cut the distance in half. That'd be awesome.
See, we do 80, you do 76, right?
Yeah.
Listen to
Well,
Pennsylvania boys.
I've I've
Whatever.
taken 80, but kind of depends on where I'm going. If I go up to Gingerman, it's
80.
yeah, it's like an 11-hour drive, but
Hmm.
yeah, I'm going north. So
We've done that too. It's a fun one. It's worth the trip. Definitely a good place to push your limits.
did you go
So
to you ever been to a Midwest festival
I have
or
not been
just
to Midwest yet. It's
yeah,
our daughter is in senior, our youngest is a senior in high school. So races during the school year are difficult.
gotcha.
And Midwest is like just before. I think it's in May,
Uh
right? So
yeah, it was like I think June or something this year. It
yeah,
was I forget, but
yeah. As soon as I can be an irresponsible adult all the time, not just part of the time, we'll take that. We'll get that one done. Okay. All right. So you're kind of the same as us with the slightly different track experiences, but that's fine. I like both of those. All right. So you mentioned before we got recording, or actually we were probably recording, and it's just something I cut off before the intro bumper, that you hadn't been doing this terribly long. So what got you started and when and how did you progress so quickly and why are we so jealous?
so let's see, the first track day I had ever been to was in 2020.
Oh, I'm really jealous
Um,
now. You're one of the few people we've had on that is like won stuff and started after us. There's probably a ton of them, but that's a different story. Okay, go ahead, make me. I'm shriveling up
um,
inside. It's fine.
I'm flattered. But yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I've been interested in, track stuff and, racing and stuff like that for years. I'm not sure when the interest really started. Um, I wasn't really super interested in cars growing up.
Hmm.
I had dad, it was a mechanic, kind of jack of all trades type of deal. He basically would force me to work on like our family cars and stuff with him. So I kind of got, familiar with tools and, I've been mechanically inclined my whole life. But I didn't really enjoy like wrenching or anything like that. Like it was just a chore to me, especially since, I was being forced to do it as a kid and I just wanted to go play or, go, skateboard or do whatever I was doing as a young adult. And it wasn't really until I I think it was I got my second car was the first Honda I'd had, and that kind of what had gotten me into the realm of Hondas. And before that, I was kind of like, oh, Hondas are dumb, they're slow, they don't make any power, they're front wheel drive. Kind of had this like, turn my nose up at them and stigma. And then now look at me, I'm just like Mr. Honda, through and through. But there was kind of I guess like a realization that how good and reliable the cars are for daily driving. So I picked one up. A couple of friends of mine had them, and they hadn't given them any issues for like years. They racked up tons of miles on them. So it got to the point where I was like, all right, I need a reliable vehicle. So I, bought a Civic, bought a, 99 Civic hatchback. And that was my second car, like I said, and I drove that thing until it had almost 300,000 miles on the clock, and it never gave me an issue besides like, brake pads and tires and fluids. Like it just kept on trucking. I don't think I hardly ever changed the oil in that thing, and it still kept going. So that was kind of what won me over to the Honda realm of things. And then I didn't really get exposed to like the performance side of any of that until I had really picked up my second Honda, and I started kind of digging around on the forums and stuff like that to look for ways to, upgrade it and make it handle better and just make it more fun to drive around on the road.
Mm-hmm.
Because at this point, it was still, I only had a single car. It was just my daily driver back and forth to work. And I just wanted to make it more fun to drive. I wasn't really looking for like power or anything like that, but I wanted to do like, suspension mods and, like shocks, springs, sway bars, stuff like that. So I started digging around the forums, and that was kind of around at the time that like the first couple Gran Turismo games had come out, and I was playing those, and they really kind of opened my eyes to just driving. Really, it's just kind of weird how a video game really did that
Hmm.
for me. But it was, it's just I didn't know anything about it. I'd had racing games and like stuff like that previously, but for some reason that particular game, and I guess just like at the time, how I guess close to being realistic the physics were in that game
Right.
compared to what was out, on like other video games at the time. It was just kind of eye-opening, and I was like, oh wow, like this is different and this is interesting. And then that kind of got me into, you know, other cars and and everything that was basically in that game. I was like, all right, this is pretty cool, right? So it just that kind of started a whole like started me down that enthusiasm or enthusiast path of learning how to get into like the performance side of things. But I still had no clue that it was attainable to even get out on a racetrack at that point. I mean, this
Right.
was back in the mid 2000s, and I guess at that time it really wasn't as accessible as it is now. But it took me up until like 2018, 2019 before I really learned some of the avenues to get out on track with my own car. And then it still took me another couple years beyond that to even work up the nerve or feel confident in the car that I had at the time that it was even capable to go out on track. So it really took me like far too long to finally take that first step. And then once I finally did, I was just like, what the hell have I been doing my whole life? Like this is where I belong. I was just instantly hooked. But but yeah, I mean, I spent years just kind of buying a few different Hondas, modifying them, kind of making them like track inspired stuff that I would just drive around on the street and drive to work and just do dumb stuff around on the road, back roads and stuff like that. And never took it out on the track until finally in 2020, a friend of mine was just like, dude, you got to get out there. Like, here's a link to um Track Night in America,
Hmm.
actually. And he was like, these events are like relatively cheap. I think it was like $150 at the time. And he was like, just get out there. It's only 3 sessions. Like, you don't have to do anything crazy to your car. And I really, I already understood, kind of what I needed with the car. The car was far more capable than it needed to be for like a novice HPDE. Like I had already like engine swapped it, and I had, good suspension and, brake pads and all this stuff. Like it was ready to go. It just took me like a while to make that first step. And then once
Right.
I did, like it was I was hooked. I haven't wanted to do anything else with my time and money since. It's just
Yeah. It's just
down
one
a
of
rabbit hole.
it's one of the jokes we make about it. Like the only good thing about waiting to get on track is the only thing that helps you is your bank account. You know.
Yeah, for until it all depletes,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
you
it
can
just
stack it up and then it's all gone.
yeah, exactly. So it's fun though. It's we noticed it a lot when we first were getting started. We got a lot of like weird looks from people when we said we used to race cars, and they'd be like, "No, you don't," and or you can't race cars on a track. I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, you can. It's not that bad." Um, but it's kind of funny. It's it now I think it's moved. Maybe it's just the people we're bumping into. It's moved from you can't race cars or no one like us, like normal people with quotes around us, obviously, can get on track to now it's like, well, for work, I drive a truck for, 30 or 40,000 miles a year. So I already know how to drive. So, I'm going to dominate. And I'm sitting there going, it's not really the same driving, but,
It's not even close. You don't
it's,
know what you don't know,
it's a little different. It's a little different. So taking advantage of your setup for me, suppose we have some people who enjoy their cars perhaps a little too much on the road, especially maybe not so much the back rows, but some of the road warriors. Why should they why should they look to go to the track as opposed to continuing what they're currently doing?
Well, aside from the risk of bodily harm and injury and crashing into another car or whatever,
And sparkly blue lights coming up behind you. Yeah.
or that, yeah, jail time and fines and all that stuff. I mean, regardless of all that, you can't get anywhere near the the limit of, grip and performance and everything that you get on the track. Like it's just,
Hmm.
no matter how fast you think you're going on the street, you you're not even close unless you're, really
You
sliding the car around on the verge of crashing the thing, in which case you're probably, grossly overdriving it and in danger of hurting yourself. You're
yep.
not going to get to that point on the track. It just doesn't happen.
Please don't. Just
Yeah, it's not worth it. It's really
no,
not worth it.
no.
I've been there. I crashed a car on the street. My first Integra that I had was like my prized possession. It was a car that I had bought from a single owner. It was garage kept its whole life. It was rust free, which is rare for a Northeast car. The thing was a gem, and I had it for a few years. Did a bunch of work to it, engine swapped it, and then I think it was 6 months after I engine swapped it, I put it into a ditch
Ick.
just because I was, being dumb and hooning around the street and made a mistake and slid off backwards at 70 miles an hour and smashed the whole rear passenger side of the car, basically twisted the whole unibody was twisted at that point, really. But that was kind of a wake up call. And
Hmm.
that was one of the reasons why I was finally like, okay, this is dumb.
It was always dumb. It's just you had to realize it. It's fine.
Yeah, it was a hard lesson to learn. Because like I
Yeah.
already knew, but I really needed something to just slap me in the face like that. So
Yeah, that's a big can be painful slap. So not fun. So you did track night in America, and then you transitioned HPDEs, or what, did you go
yeah.
straight into winning national championships? Or
No, that I was definitely way off pace at first for the first couple of seasons. Obviously, I mean, it's like I think even in your first year or two, I think people don't really. I mean, at least for me, it took me a while to work up the pace and really realize like what it was to like drive the tires to, their
Mhm.
limited grip. It's probably 10 seconds or more slower a lap than I am now when my first season on the track, and still thinking I'm like flying. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's
You
there's a
can't
whole.
go any faster than that.
I
Okay. You say
was
so.
I think I was doing like minute 41s at Thunderbolt
Hmm.
then, and now, I think I did mid 27 the last time I was there. So that's that's the progression over 4 years. And I was just, I knew I wasn't going to be fast the first time I went out or anything like that, but it's just like, going on those novice groups, was driving around. My car had, a lot more power than a lot of the other cars in the novice groups. So I was basically like, it wasn't one of the cars that was giving a lot of point buys. But so it kind of give me this like, false sense of like, I guess, ability or whatever.
Hmm.
When I'm starting off, I'm like, man, I'm faster than all these other kids in this novice group, and they're riding around and like stock Miatas or whatever, and I'm flying, I'm buying them in this like 240 horsepower, swapped Integra. But I didn't have any like unrealistic expectations. It was kind of just like, hey, let me go out, get my feet wet. I only did, I think, 3 or 4 track nights that first summer,
Hmm.
and then the next year I kind of or wait, no, it was the end of that first summer was the first time I actually had gone to Gingerman as a spectator, and
Oh,
that's
okay.
when I got first exposed to GridLife. Um, Pretty sure it was that. Yeah, it was late in the season. I think it was October, and it was I guess right after like COVID had started and all the restrictions and everything that were going on. So they had like a Midwest festival like late in the season, and it was
Yeah.
cold and wet the whole time and rainy, and there was no like concerts or like tons of spectators like there normally is at a Midwest festival, but it was just, it was more just a track weekend in the rain.
Hmm.
Um, and I'd gotten the invite from a couple good friends of mine who I had only met on like online, like Instagram and the forums and stuff like that up until that point. And they were like, hey, come out to this event. I know it's far for you, but like really think you'd have a good time. So I hopped in my Integra and drove it, 11 hours out there, hung out, crewed for a friend of mine who was competing that weekend, met a bunch of people and had like the best time ever. And that was kind of what got me roped into the whole grid life thing, was just that one event. And then the very next season was when I decided. I was like, okay, like I got a truck, got a trailer. Because the first season I was just driving the car to the track and home, and I was like, well, if I'm gonna travel and do anything with grid life, like nothing's really close. I think at the time the closest grid life event was Mid Ohio, so
Right.
that's still what, 8 hours for me or whatever. So I knew I was gonna have to get a truck and trailer, so I went out and bought, a tow rig and everything, and just started trying to get as much seat time as I possibly could. I did a handful of track night in Americas. I did NASA HPD at Thunderbolt. I went to Mid Ohio with GridLife. I went to Gingerman for Honda Meet, which is
Hmm.
like GridLife similar event or original GridLife
Yep.
event before GridLife existed. But that was a ton of fun. That was actually the first time I had gotten to drive Gingerman. So I did all that year. Was kind of in like the HPD, like novice to intermediate groups. And then it was like the end of that season. I think it was the very last event of that season. Um, they had changed the grid life schedule around to where Midwest Festival was happening again, like end of that season, and I wanted to go to hang out, but I couldn't get like a driver's ticket to do HPD or anything like that. And then like a time attack competition ticket popped up, and
Hmm.
I just kind of like jumped on it. And not even being I hadn't even like really worked my way up through like the HPD like advanced or DE4 or whatever. And just kind of like jumped in like straight in the competition, like probably a little bit too early, but it was kind of just like, hey, I'm gonna go to this event, I'm gonna compete, I'm just gonna try and like swim and not get in anybody's way. even if I'm not fast, like I just want to go play with my friends in competition because I just, I've been seeing all them having a ton of fun out there. Like they'd be at the time attack groups, and then I'm just running an HPDE, and then like we're kind of comparing lap times, and I'm like, we're all sharing data and stuff like that. And it got to the point where I was just like, man, like I want to be out there with those guys. So
Right.
I kind of made the premature at the time jump in the competition for the last event of that season, and it was a blast. I definitely, looking back on it now, I definitely like wasn't ready to really be like pushing that hard for lap times because I definitely made some mistakes. I went off. I remember missing a black flag at one point. You know what I mean? It's just stuff like that, like awareness things that I probably wasn't quite up to standards yet for competition. But I it was kind of like, you know, sink or swim type of deal. I went out and just, had fun and just didn't cause any problems really. But me and another good friend of mine were, battling for like ninth and 10th place in Club TR. We were just having a blast because we were just like a 10th or hundredths apart, way back in the middle of the pack and just having a blast. So that was kind of like when I took that transition from DE to competition. And then, obviously didn't really look back from there either. And then it's just been nothing but trying to progress as a driver and get faster ever since.
Right.
And then I've made a bunch of changes to the car. Picked up a sim rig last winter. That was a huge deal for me, just being able to get on the sim and just do a bunch of reps and gain some muscle memory at certain tracks and get I guess a better understanding of like vehicle dynamics. And it really, like, a lot of people talk about how like sim can just kind of expand your bandwidth,
Mhm.
and I didn't really like fully, I guess, give it the credit it deserved until I finally like got my own setup. And then immediately the start of the following event, just like noticed that I just had a better understanding of what the car was doing underneath me. And now I'm just like a huge advocate for, just even with the basic simulator setup, just get something, it's so helpful.
So do you have like any vibration or inputs, or what kind of system do you have set up?
It's just a basic, like older Fanatec,
Wheel.
like belt driven wheelbase. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
got force feedback, but it's not the highest strength. It's not like a direct drive setup like the new stuff. I do plan on upgrading it here at some point, but it was just something I picked up like cheap off a marketplace.
Right.
I got a cheap like chassis rig that I was able to bolt like a normal car seat to from Amazon for like $150 or whatever it was.
Mhm.
I basically just tried to like, get a setup as cheap as I could. I got a secondhand PC from a friend of mine who was upgrading. So, I got everything done for as cheap as possible. And um monitor off a marketplace, everything was just deals. But that was like probably some of the best money invested in like just progressing as a driver, really. Just being able to sit there for hours and hours and just do laps and figure things out and um kind of open my eyes to understanding how to strategically approach different corners was kind of a big deal. Like some
In what
corners are
way?
slow and fast out. Some
Oh, okay.
corners you might want to attack entry speed and then suffer on exit, or, faster corners, just really paying attention, especially with front wheel drive, like where you're getting back to throttle to maximize the straight on exit, all this stuff that I just didn't really like consciously understand as well before. And then
Hmm.
being able to kind of like figure it out at home, put it to practice, and then get back out on the track and, see the immediate results in lap time and data and everything. It's just, it's
It's
been
a little
big.
cheaper once you're set up too. Those laps don't cost a whole lot.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You can do hundreds of laps at home and not spend a dime.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I haven't replaced many of the tires. Well, the ones I did replace, they weren't that expensive when I was on sim. It wasn't quite as bad as when I do it in real life. I don't know. Just and those guys really do it really quick. I mean, they're fast. Could do some serious damage on a real world, but it's okay. So Were you doing your sim stuff like during the plague, or was it post plague? Because during the plague, it was quite a pricey thing, and everything was sold out. It was rather hysterical.
Yeah, so I kind of caught the tail end of that. I definitely overpaid for I think the equipment, like the at least the wheelbase and the pedals I got, but it was, kind of what was that, 20, I guess it was early 2023 when I picked that stuff up. So it was
Yeah,
kind
so it
of,
was still high. Yeah,
yeah, still high. It hasn't quite come down yet, but it was post like craziness.
yeah, it was lunacy
Um,
for a while.
yeah, I had only just been seeing, stuff on social media and everything. It just wasn't, firsthand experience. I was more trying to buy like car parts and dealing with, the price gouging and the lunacy there.
Hmm.
Um, it's just is, it's all the same. And I think it's just now like stuff is just now finally starting to like really
Starting to
level
taper.
out a little bit. Yeah.
I don't know. Most of the stuff we need, it still seems to be cheaper for us to buy a parts car than to buy the part.
Yeah, that's actually true.
It's just,
It's kind
yeah.
of getting hard for me in these old Hondas, but
Hmm. You seem to be doing okay though, sir. So, we're gonna get there. So let's see, 3, 4 years ago, you start doing this. No, it was more than that. Whatever. I'm gonna make it seem more impressive for you. 3 or 4 years ago, you go to track night in America, you show up there, you learn a little bit. Then you take a couple HPDEs and then boom, national championship. Next thing you know, right?
yep, literally snap my fingers and
That
it
was,
just happened.
it's amazing to be a natural talent, It must be.
No, 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 no.
No, no, no. It's never that way. It just seems that way from the external. Everybody's like, "Oh, I'm jealous." I'm like, "You don't know what they did to get there, buddy."
Yeah, you don't see the neurotic obsession for
Hmm. The lack of the
life.
life anywhere else. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. The bank
all-consuming
account that's going.
fire.
Whee!
Yep.
So, all right. So we did your HBDs. We learned. I believe from the proximity to me and the events you're talking about, we have raced together more times than I think we even know. Just never bumped into each other, which is good on track, not bad on paddock. Track, you don't want to bump into anybody.
No,
So
you don't.
no, I hate body work. It's nothing worse. So then you made your jump to grid life. You did your time attack with your surprise to you time attack entry card. Being able to do that's the only thing wrong with grid life is it's so damn good and so popular you can't get in. Like
Yeah, seriously. It's become a struggle.
I know it's like I'm thinking I want to do because I live a couple hours from you, so we have the
Mhm.
same closeness, and there's only a couple close ones, but you don't want to buy a gold pass when you're only going to go to two or three, maybe four, but you almost have to buy gold to go to the ones that are close.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it was funny because this past year I was one of the lucky few, like there's very few of us that actually got a gold pass and got all the events that we wanted
yeah,
because there was so many like people trading events or just buying events to fill
just
the
in
gold
case.
pass
Yep.
requirement and then trading them like Pokemon cards afterward. Like it was
Hmm.
just kind of crazy. But then I saw people like James Houghton, for example, just scoring tickets, and a lot of times they were even, at discounted prices a week leading up to just about every event from people who were just trying to unload them all season long. And I mean, it's a dice roll, but it's like, man, like it made me think, like, did I really need to stress and scramble over getting a gold pass, or could I have just held out until like, you know, 1 or 2 weeks before each event and just like scooped up tickets last minute? Because it seems like every event there's just dozen people just trying to unload stuff desperately. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. My inner planner can't play that game.
I know.
I've already bought one, two, three, four, five, six, 7 events, and we're recording this the first week in November. I've already bought
Are you
7 events for next
wow.
year, so I've only got a couple more spots, and then my weekends are full. But
Holy crap.
so yeah, I would be twitchy just waiting for a couple weeks before.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely sympathize with that. I mean, I was like getting, anxiety before the gold passes even went up for sale. I was like, all right, I got to make sure I get what I want because I feel like if you just miss your chance, like you're just screwed for the whole season. But it's really not the case. I mean, you can
No, you're not. You're not.
always pick up stuff. Yeah.
It's just amazing that they can sell out in like literally seconds. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
it's like
It was probably
zip, boom.
30 seconds this past year for some of the, Mid Ohio, Gingerman, like
Hmm.
the Hyde, Lime Rock, all the, all the popular ones. But
Yeah. I happened to be
yeah,
traveling for business and I pulled off on an exit ramp to, I think stopped in like a McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts or some parking lot and started logging into my phone. And by the time I logged into my phone, it was sold out. I was like, damn it.
yeah.
Oh, well.
Yeah, I was at work and I literally just stopped what I was doing and I was like, all right, I gotta do this right now.
Yeah, I think being handicapped on the cell service wasn't the best plan for me, but it was what it was. Anyway, all right. So let's see. Let's go forward a little bit. You did your first little taste of Club TR. Apparently, it tasted pretty good. Then last year, second season, I guess technically, not
Yeah,
24,
so
23,
right. So was this year my third full season? So
maybe. Math
trying
works,
to, yeah,
sort
I
of.
can I
It's
can't even
either
remember at this point. It all just jumbles
yeah,
together in my brain.
it's all one big race anyway.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, 2022 I did a full season
Did you? Okay.
um in Club TR. And I think that was, I can't remember exactly which events I did. 2023 I did another full season, and then this season. So yeah, 3 years total in the class.
Well, luckily the performance and the time's been going was slower and slower, so it was easier for you because everything is just
Yes.
getting slower. I mean, no problem there.
Right. Yeah, we didn't have, James Houghton like leading the class this year or anything to contend with.
Yeah,
It's
future
been
podcast
a
guest, he just
cakewalk.
doesn't know it yet, but that's fine.
I was gonna ask if you had him on, but yeah, he likes to talk, so I'm sure he would
Yeah,
come on at some point. He's a good one.
it would be. He would be. But nobody gave us, brake pads and rotors to have James on. They gave it to have Evan on. So if you
I'm
want to
gonna rub
have,
that in his face.
that's right. That's right. You are a bribed guest. It's okay. Hey, if you can beat him in something, that's you're doing something. He can play the game pretty well.
Yeah, I beat him in a few tracks this year. I'm gonna continue to rub that in his face. No, he's that guy has been probably the coolest person to like meet and gain his friendship and respect this season. Like it's
Hmm.
something that like, I've looked up to this guy for years as being like this time attack legend, right?
Yeah, for
And
sure.
then for him to like hop into our class at the end of last season at Lime Rock and just pretty much mop the floor with the class. And then we're all just like, damn, okay. Like
Okay.
there's the benchmark right there, right? And then there was I think there was even some talk about people like, oh, is that car legal? Like blah blah blah. The typical racer excuses for not being able to like keep up with someone who's extremely fast. And then he came back this year, and we heard before the season started that he was going to run a full season in this eighth gen Civic that they have, whatever the Canadian model that it's called. The car is built by a good friend of his. The whole idea was to showcase the car as being a capable vehicle to run out in the future for GLTC, which is what it did at PittRace.
Right.
But the whole plan was for James to campaign it in Club TR this season, show its potential as a way to like market it for rental. So we were all like, crap, like we got to go up against this guy this season. Like who's coming in second? Like nobody thought they had anything for him. And then at the first couple events this season, like we went to Carolina Motorsports Park. Um, he was pretty quick right off the jump.
Yep.
And then he was having some just mechanical issues all weekend long. I ended up going a little bit faster than him in one of the early morning sessions on the final day of competition. Was it like Saturday or whatever? It's Saturday morning. I managed to squeak by him by a few tenths, and then as the track progressively got like crappier and crappier after the drifting and the heat and everything like that, I didn't think that it was it would be quite so easy for him to just come back and take that record back from me by a few tenths of a second. But it was in a session where me and the rest of the top like five of us were a whole second off of our own pace, and then he comes and beats all of us like in the worst session of the weekend. So it just kind of showed it was a clear indication of how, far off pace we were. Like if he had some like unhindered, laps where the car was cooperating earlier that morning, he probably would have beat us all by 2 full seconds. So, it was just like, all right, we're slow. We need to like, you know, figure out, like, dig deep and figure out where to find this pace. And then we get to the podium sprint, which is like the top five shootout at the end of the weekend at
Mhm.
like the festival style weekends. And then the car again has some, I guess it was like some crank trigger errors or whatever. Basically, it wouldn't stay running for a full lap without like misfiring or whatever was happening. So he couldn't even get a clear lap. So he ended up not, winning that shootout like you should have based on, his pace.
Mhm.
So I came away with a win that weekend, and not to say that I wasn't hyped to win, but I was just like, I still knew that like I wasn't the fastest driver there that weekend. You know what I mean? It was kind of just by
Work
circumstance.
work to be done.
Yeah. So I was like, yeah, James is still the top dog. We all got work to do. And then he goes to Gingerman for the Rev Up event that is usually precedes Midwest Festival.
Mhm.
It's like a club event. It's usually more chill and laid back. Doesn't have all the festival craziness that Midwest Fest does. But he goes there and resets the class record at Gingerman, which is kind of like the Midwest benchmark track. And
Mhm.
he put that lap time deep into the minute 38s, which is like really impressive for that place.
Yep.
Um,
I remember when you guys were struggling and thinking, was 140 doable?
yeah, it's like
Apparently it
minute
is.
40s. Yeah, minute 40s are like the that kind of like line where it kind of distinguishes like the respectably quick cars from, like, slower, lower powered stuff, right? But
Mhm.
it's even in a car that has a decent amount of power, getting a 39 at that track is not easy.
Nope.
It took me a few years to do it. It took me until this year to finally get it. I was in the 42s, 41s, kept dipping it down, and this year I finally just like, you know, knock it down by, knock my personal best down by a couple seconds. And I the first practice session this weekend at Midwest Festival, I dropped down to a 39.1, which is like,
Wow.
head and shoulders above what I've ever done before. But like I said, James still had the record from that previous event. I think it was like a 38.2 or 38.4 or something like that. It was pretty deep in the 38s. So it was just like, man, like this guy is just like putting us to shame.
Mhm.
It's like so fast. The car is just like clearly set up well. It's clear, it makes good power. It has grip. It turns well, especially for a car that wasn't it. I don't know. Some people don't consider it to be as capable of a chassis as kind of like the older 90s, like double wishbone Hondas, right? So there's
Mhm.
the one he has like the McPherson strut front end.
Mhm.
It's a lot heavier than our cars. I think it's the min weight for our class is 2550 with driver for our displacement, and I think he's running it close to like 2,700 pounds. So he was like, pretty good margin above what some of the lighter cars in the class are, especially mine. I mean, I'm at like a 2,600 pounds, and he's almost a full 100 pounds heavier,
Yeah.
and then he's still that much faster with probably the same power.
Yeah, we're used to
So
hearing all the eighth gen excuses from a fellow podcaster, Khan.
Con, yeah,
That's for
poor
you,
Con.
Khan. Just for you, buddy.
He's he's so restricted with what he can do to that car. I can imagine being a struggle, right?
The struggle bus is real. And then he was having his off-road excursions due to braking issues. So that was also fun this season. So
Oh yeah, I've seen some of that. Seems like he's got it pretty well sorted though. He picked up, some pretty
he's
good
getting there.
pace. Yeah,
He's coming on soon for we're going to redo goals, and I one of the things I do is I get to choose a goal for everybody who comes on. So I get to I already have one special just for him. So it'll be
sweet.
fun.
Yeah, I had just listened to the one you guys did. Uh, what was that, last week before? I forget. Either way, you guys did one
Oh, with Khan?
What was it? Yeah.
Yeah, what was that
Anyway,
one? We did one. Can't remember. I don't know.
it was yeah, it was recent. I forget. It was about how the podcast had like helped him and how he progressed and stuff like that.
Oh, that was on his
Yeah.
podcast. Yeah, I
Yeah.
interviewed him about his stuff. I was episode 99, his card number. So that was fun. I had a good time with that.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
I had a
Yeah.
good time with
Yeah, I
that.
enjoy his show. It was
Yeah,
good.
he's good.
Um
He's just afraid to go race endurance racing. I don't know what's the matter with him. He's just yeah.
he's got that sprint race
I
dog in him.
know. I know. I know. Our seat fits his butt too. It'll be fine. We'll get him.
Right.
All right, so
Hey, racing is racing, right?
we're done making fun of Con. Let's go compliment James on how he's another one of those alien people.
So yeah, James is a freak. So back to that. He mopped the floor with us at, some events. We get to Midwest Festival. He had reset the record at the previous Gingerman event. He came back to Gingerman again a couple weeks later. For whatever reason, they have two back-to-back events at Gingerman. But
Hmm.
so I forget, early on in the weekend, I think it was, he reset the record again, put it like a 38-0.
Yep.
I don't remember when in the weekend it was, but either way, we were all just like, holy crap, like this guy's knocking on the door of 37s. Like this is insane, right?
Yeah.
So I had managed to keep myself within the top five leading up to the final shootout at the end. And I think I was sitting E3 out of the top five. So we go into the shootout and we see some rain like on the horizon. We had all been kind of looking at the forecast leading up to that, thinking that like, man, this rain really looks like it's a high chance of hitting right at the time we're going to do the shootout.
Hmm.
So we didn't really know like how it was going to play out. We were kind of expecting the time attack director or whoever to kind of make a call to either try and like avoid it by shuffling the schedule around or send us all out at once so we got the same conditions, but that didn't happen. So we ended up going out, staggered one by one. And then basically the rain held off until I finished my second flyer of the shootout. We only get two laps. We get a warm up,
Right.
two flyers, and a cool down. I was coming up to the last corner on my second flyer, which was the best of the two, and the rain just started pouring. So at that point, I was like, well, nobody who's going after me is going to get a lap. And we start out from like fifth, like P5 to P1. So, my friend Mario and James still had yet to go. So the rain basically screwed the both of them over. Mario had a mechanical failure. And then James went out and it was just like an ice rink at that point. Like the
Right.
rain had come down so heavy, the track was gone. The drifters had left a bunch of tire marbles out there, and he said he basically just touched the brakes and just went like locked up and went straight off. It had no shot. It's just so.
Happens,
I
but
know he
not
was
what you want to see.
not at all. Yeah, I was just kind of bummed because it's just like that it wasn't a fair shake for him in that competition format. And
Hmm.
if we all had gone out at the same time, we all could have, ran for like two laps and gotten our flyers in and came back in before the rain even started. But they didn't make the judgment call, when they should have. So it's just, he literally got the worst conditions possible and then got DQ'd because he went off. So it was just, not ideal for him. And then, I ended up winning that event based on like circumstances that were out of his control.
Right.
So again, I was like, oh, sweet, I got an event win, but I wasn't super hyped on it. It was very like mixed emotions. I was bummed for him. I was bummed for Josh, who, had built and maintained the car. Like
Right.
Josh was more upset than James was, but we talked to Abe, the time attack director, like that night and just kind of, voiced our opinions on the matter. Like James and I were in agreement that like, in the future, if something that was going to happen, we should at least like kind of make the, call an audible and throw everybody out at the same time so everybody gets equal conditions. So they ended up making a format change to the rules like later on this season, to kind of, I guess, remedy that.
Right.
But anyway, so I got that event win. It was pretty awesome. Like it's kind of like winning a Midwest Fest is like winning like the GridLife Super Bowl kind of, because it's like a one of their bigger events of the season. It's at the home track, so it's just like really awesome to get that.
Right.
But at the same time, like I said, I didn't feel like I fully earned it. Um, what was really cool that weekend though was they had granted me the like a Spirit of the Weekend award, which is kind of like a sportsmanship
Hmm.
award type of deal.
Right.
So there's a um whole other story going on in the background of that event was my friend Evan Weeder, who is great friend of mine, was one of the guys who really twisted my arm into getting out on track. It also is like sponsored by like the same companies that I am, whatever. We're always in the paddock together. His engine ended up failing in the first practice session of the weekend.
Dick.
And yeah, it was on Thursday, and then we still had until, Sunday morning. So we were like, man, this sucks. Like for him to just be out so soon and not even have a chance was just really like upsetting. So between the group of us, we all kind of twisted his arm and convinced him to go to Chicago, to the JDM depot in Chicago, and buy another like Honda K24 engine and bring it back to the paddock. And then we were like, we have tons of hands here. Like we're gonna like rip your car apart while you're driving to Chicago. And then when you get back, we're gonna throw this engine in. You're gonna get back out there. You're gonna get yourself into the top five and get out there for the podium sprint. So that was the plan. Um, so him and our other friend Grant Davidson, who is also a former Club TR champion, um, set off to Chicago. They didn't come back for I think 8 hours. The traffic was horrible. They made a pit stop at another shop to try and find another part that someone else needed. By the time they got back, it was late in the day. We had already had um, Evan Weeder's car like basically completely pulled, like the engine and everything were out. It turns out that I guess the crankshaft was walking. Two of the flywheel bolts had backed out, allowing the flywheel to basically micro weld itself to
Dick.
the crankshaft, and it was just like pissing oil all out of the rear main seal, which was what our first indication was, seeing the oil like come out of the transmission cover and everything. So we were like, well, there's a problem. When we start looking in and we're like, oh boy, this is worse than we thought it was. So yeah, he brought the engine back. We stripped his old engine down. We had to transfer a whole ton of parts off of that engine onto the new one he just picked up, and we oil pan, oil pump, um, camshafts, cam gear, all the water pump and all the external accessories, like a whole bunch of stuff. So like the engine had to get dressed. Another friend of ours ran to pick up a flywheel from like a local Facebook marketplace ad
Right.
like an hour away. Luckily, it was like an older gentleman. He said it was like 7 years old. He had just this stock Honda K series flywheel with bolts and everything. We were like, we lucked out. So um, we had all the pieces to get it back together. We ended up getting the engine in the car at maybe 2 a.m., something like that. It was late. Yeah. So we busted ass all day long. In between myself trying to diagnose issues with my own car, going out trying to run my own sessions and compete, I was basically like, I had a wrench in my hand or I was in the car driving. It was just all day long. It was just
Right.
nonstop. Woke up at 8 a.m. the final day, finished helping them kind of like bolt check and like touch up the car, make sure it was runnable. We fired it up, it ran, it sounded super healthy. So we were all just like rejoicing and super hyped. And there was a whole bunch of like detailed like stuff that happened the night before where we thought we were screwed. And then people came in the paddock and helped us out and like saved the day. And it was just this whole group effort, like one of those times where you see like the community just pull together and like help somebody. And it was just people that weren't even like in our immediate friends group, were just coming up and literally just, lending a hand, trying to get us back out there. It was awesome. So yeah, we got them back out there the next day. We only had one session left to qualify for the top, uh, the top five shootout, the podium sprint. And, um, since he hadn't run a lap at that point to put himself into a grid order, he had to start dead last in the back of our class, which meant he was behind people who were literally like 15 seconds a lap slower.
Right.
So it was a tough session. He hit a bunch of traffic. Um, at some point, he got one clear lap, and I think he said he missed a shift from like fourth to fifth, or yeah, I think he meant to either go up a gear, down a gear, and he went up a gear, something like that. It cost him 2/10, and he ended up missing out on the top five by like 1/10.
Ick.
Like that's how tight it was. Yeah, so he didn't make it in the top five. Um, but it was kind of weird, like thinking back on that. It was like, man, we tried so hard to get him out there. It didn't work out. But then like seeing how the weather came and how like the cars in grid were ordered leading up to that top five shootout, and then how I barely had enough time to get a lap in before the rain came. If he was in that top five, like I think I would have gotten pushed into the rain and I wouldn't have been able to get a lap and I wouldn't have won. So it was just like the way and that would have, set my trajectory for the whole season and I probably wouldn't have won the season championship. So it was like
Right.
everything that kind of happened all along my season was kind of these just weird strokes of luck that, I didn't really like ask for or deserve. It just like stuff just happened, you know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, it was just like another driver of our stand was supposed to be P5 in the podium sprint. His car was having mechanical issues, so he wasn't even able to make a lap. So when he pulled off early, they sent Peter out and then they sent me out. So it was basically I got out a little bit earlier, a couple minutes sooner than I would have, and then I was able to miss the rain. So just, all the the weird pieces of luck in a timeline that just lined up for me to be able to get that lap was kind of just like, allowed it to happen. Um,
So what you have to do, you have to get a shirt for next season. And it says luck is when skill meets preparation.
there's yeah, right. And there's still always that little sprinkle of like fairy dust of just pure luck that just has to be there. It's like you can prepare all you want and you
Yep.
can have all the skill you want, and then still something could fight you and just ruin your weekend, like your engine can go, your car could just fight you or whatever.
Yep.
It's just
Bashes
like,
everything against the rocks. It doesn't matter what you
yep.
do. hmm That's
So
racing. The other thing that you mentioned and you showed it, and I think that's probably a large percentage of why you won that weekend's award, is people don't understand how important it is for the racers to have all their friends out there racing, because the thing we hate most is to have somebody in paddock fixing their car not able to race, and you'll
yeah,
you'll give a part off of your car or your one spare part to a friend to get him back on car or her
yep.
back on the track, and it may end up screwing you, which it almost did in this case.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Just I don't know how many people believe in like karma or something like
hmm
that, you know what I mean? But it's like sometimes it really seems like, you try to help someone else and it really will just come back around, and whether
For
it's
sure.
that person or somebody else, like, will pay it back, tenfold later on. It's just, but
100%.
like you said, I would rather just see my friends out there driving, even if it's something that like, you know, is a big, like a something that's expensive or whatever that I have, like you said, my only spare or whatever. It's like if it's going to help a competitor or a close friend of mine or whoever just get back on
Yeah.
track and not lose their whole weekend, sure, why not? If
hmm
they got to replace the part later on, that's fine, we'll figure that out
We'll
later.
figure that
Just
out later. Just
get
get
out
out
there.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
get out there, right?
hmm For sure.
So let's see, that was Midwest Festival done and dusted. um so that
From
was two
from
wins so far
reports
that season.
reports non-YouTube related, it sounded like this Midwest Festival was truly a Midwest Festival from what we're hearing.
Yeah, it was a very packed and like crazy paddock, tons of spectators. It
Yep.
was Those events are pretty nuts. I mean, they're a little too chaotic for some people's tastes. especially when it comes to driving, because you're just trying to get from your paddock spot to grid
Yep.
is like wading through a sea of people sometimes, and it gets kind of frustrating. But I don't know. It's a once a year thing, and I feel like if there's people out there that haven't like experienced it, I think it's like kind of one of those things that you at least just have to experience once. And if you don't, if it's not your vibe, then like that's understandable, but at least just come out, check it out for the spectacle that it is, because it is
Hmm.
kind of like crazy with, like all the drifting and, the music and the spectators. They put on like a show, you know what I mean?
Yep.
It's, people compare it to like Hyperfest and stuff all like that. Like I haven't been to a Hyperfest, but I see all the social media stuff and that seems pretty huge. And Midwest Festival is kind of like GridLife's, version of that, maybe just in a smaller space. So
Yep.
everything's just more cramped and packed in this smaller track and paddock. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. But it is catered towards kind of like the younger crowd, like especially with like the music selection and stuff for the shows. But
Yep.
it's still a ton of fun to just go and like have a blast and let loose for a weekend.
Yeah, I think the those festival events have grown the sport too, so that's not to be discounted, even though, sometimes you wonder. It's like,
Yeah.
what what are we doing here? But I think we've gotten a whole bunch of people into the sport, so I can't complain about that because getting the sport bigger and is better. So
Yeah, and that's their whole like mission right there, basically, right? In a nutshell, is just to
mhm.
bring the youth in and continue this sport so it doesn't die off when
Can't be all
you
old
know.
like me. Every I like when we interview people and they're like, I didn't start till I was 28. And I'm sitting there going, dude, I started when I was 50. So don't start. You got time. The best day to start is today. And that's the second best day to start tomorrow. So
Yep,
just go play. All right.
I'm
So
not that young either, and like I said, I haven't been doing this for that long, and I'm
I know,
not.
but we're not all national champions of Grid Life's Club
Okay.
TR. People bribe me to get you on the podcast because they want to see it so much. Whatever.
Yeah, whatever poor soul that was.
He's poorer now, so that's fine. We'll be we'll be entering
Minus
his
some brake
brakes.
pads.
Yeah, we'll be entering his brake pads into our latest test to see which ones we like because we've never tried these before. So it'll be fun.
Cool. So
Cool.
yeah, that event happened. I managed to come away with the win there again, based on luck. We went to Mid Ohio after that one, which has been my favorite track since I first went there in 2021.
Hmm.
Um, to me,
Unless it's
that's
unless it's wet, and
I and I've
then it's
been
an
super
evil
fortunate.
evil bitch.
Yeah, or at least it was. I'm not sure how
Yeah, we
much
haven't
that
heard. I haven't heard
still
anybody's.
stands.
Yep.
Even though the new pavement is a little odd feeling, I guess. The grip's there. It's still a very smooth surface, but it's like I don't know. It's just like you turn the wheel and it's like, is the car going to turn? I'm not sure.
That's always confidence inspiring.
Yeah, especially when you're on the turn one, and you're just trying not to brake as much as, as little as possible and just turn in and to feel like the front end doesn't really want to bite like you think. And then mid corner, there's a few little patches now that are different. And it's just, I don't know, it's strange, but I still love that place. Just
Hmm.
the elevation and the flow and everything. It's so good. Um, so yeah, I've really been just that's one of the tracks that like I'll sit at home on the sim and just drive. So it's just,
Hmm.
it's been kind of like a focus for me. It's like I kind of went there with the intention is like, all right, I really want to like at least match or beat the previous lap record for our class there. And I assume that with the repave, I'm like, it should be doable because the surface should be a little bit faster, right?
Right.
So then we get there. I think it was the first session of the weekend. James Houghton goes out and does James Houghton things and resets the class record by, I don't know, 4/10 or something like that. No, hold on. I gotta do some math here.
Well, if you do the
Six or
exchange rate between
the
Canada,
Canadian exchange
that's
rate,
right. You do
it'd be two
Canada,
seconds,
it'd be
right?
2 seconds slower. So I think that's the problem. You guys been doing the Canadian exchange rate the wrong way on the time. I think that's what it is. James
That's
can
why
come on
James.
and defend himself if he
That's
wants
why
to.
he's so fast.
That's right. It's Canadian time.
I think it was over at somewhere between a half and like maybe 0.7 or something like that. He had beat the class record like 3 laps off the trailer that weekend, like on old tires. Yeah.
It is James.
And
I mean,
right, we were all just like, what the heck, man? Like, is this even possible? Like, what is going on, right?
man, don't make me bust out my Tomo, James.
So I see him rolling by in the paddock like after he did that. He was like back in the GLTC car rolling out the grid or something like that. And I like waved him down. I was like, dude, you're a madman. Like, what the hell? So we were just like laughing, like, shook his hand. I was like, dude, that's awesome. Um, so the rest of us were just kind of like, okay, yeah, we don't have anything for that, like no possible way. And I think, he himself thought it was in the bag at that point. He was like, I'm sitting pretty confident. He said he even thought about just, packing the car up and putting it back in the trailer, like joking, like, oh, I got it in the bag, like just load the car back up already. So this wasn't one of the weekends with the top five shootout. This was the club format. So it's basically like, you have all weekend to run the fastest time you can.
Best luck
So
wins.
yeah, I mean, that's in my like I love the podium sprint format. It's a lot of fun. But these like traditional style like format events are kind of my favorite because it like every session you go out, it kind of puts that pressure on you to perform in that session, and it's
Mhm.
like you kind of know you have like the morning sessions are probably your best shot to get, the absolute potential out of the car with the conditions, but then it's like if you didn't get a solid lap in one of the morning sessions, you can still go out in the afternoon and make some improvements and still improve. Whereas like the podium sprint format, you're kind of just trying to play it safe, work your way, and make sure you're in the top five, and then it comes down to that one moment to lay it down. Where there's a lot of pressure on that one moment, but it's sometimes in these traditional format events, the pressure is there. Like every event or every session you go out, it's
Right.
just a different mindset. So I had some issues that weekend with the car like leaning out under full throttle. It was an issue that had started at Midwest Festival. I didn't do a very good job of trying to diagnose it. I kept just kind of opening the tune and changing the calibration and just trying to add fuel and try and band-aid it to keep the car from like going into like a fuel safety cut and like basically going into like a limp mode,
Right.
which happened to me in a few sessions, completely like ruined laps where the car would just go unresponsive for like 15 seconds until it decided that the conditions were safe enough for it to run again. So it was pretty frustrating. I had gotten like a couple like laps that were faster than I had done last year, but they still weren't at the pace that I wanted to be. And then finally, it was the last session of Friday, I believe. I got minute 35.1 at that point, which was I think a tenth faster than the previous record. But I had made some pretty big mistakes, and I knew I had left like a big chunk of time on the table. And I think it was about 5 tenths, 6 tenths of a second I had left in like 7, 8, 9 going up that hill.
Hmm.
And around 9 in the Thunder Valley, I kind of like blew all of that whole section. My rhythm was just all off, and I just butchered it. So I knew that I had enough time in my lap to match the time that James had already run.
Right.
And that surprised me because I was just like, wow, like, okay, like the time is there. If I could just link it all together and do everything absolutely perfect, I might be able to match his time. Don't think I'll be able to beat it, but at least I'll probably get pretty close.
Hmm.
Um, but that was like me on like new tires and him going out on like old tires in 3 laps. You know what I mean? So there's levels to this, right?
Yeah.
So um then I was still battling these issues with the fuel the car leaning out on fuel. And then I was struggling with that. That night I ended up letting the same friend Evan Weeder, who we swapped the engine at the previous event, his ECU just happened to die at this event, and I let him borrow the ECU out of my car, since we have very similar cars, to try and troubleshoot and diagnose, what his actual issue was. So when I got my ECU back to put it back in my car, and I tried to re-upload the calibration back on, like my calibration back onto my ECU to run my car again, it kept giving me some error message and the firmware needed to be updated, all this crap. Of course, we're, at the track, there's no Wi-Fi, internet reception or whatever, so I can't download an update to update the laptop software to even allow the laptop to communicate with the ECU. So I was kind of dead in the water at that point, and I was like, great, like there's my weekend. And went to bed. What was it? Friday night, like that, and not knowing if I was going to be able to get the car running Saturday morning. Woke up Saturday morning, ended up using a friend's laptop. It was like the third laptop I had tried at this point. And then they had like a Starlink set up in their toter home to get Wi-Fi and everything. So I ended up getting the car running. I missed the first session in the morning. James went out again and improved, sunk the record even deeper at that point. And I didn't even get a chance to go out. So all I had was like the one later afternoon session that day to try and go out and, get those 5/10 that or whatever that I knew I had left on the table. And so I had not being in the car for like a full 24 hours. I go out. Immediately in the first flyer of that session, I went off track. So I just like was pushing too hard on the first flyer, locked up going down into China Beach and went off. Went around through the hot pits. The guy in grid that was like checking the car over got stung by a bee that I had scooped up in the grass when I went off. So I felt kind of bad about that, but it was just kind of funny at the time. I was just like, damn, like I'm a dumbass for going off like that, and then somebody else gets stung by a bee, like digging the grass out of my radiator.
I'd rather
So
get stung
anyway,
by a bee at Mid Ohio than the fire ants and CMP though.
oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, they were everywhere. So yeah, I go back out that session. Luckily was able to get like another handful of laps, and I kind of just struggled to like put together a clean lap. And then the car ended up acting up in that session, and then went into that crazy like, lean protection limp mode where the car was just dead. So I was like stuck on the front straight for 20 seconds or something until the car finally woke up. And at that point, I only had enough time for one more flyer. So I finished, I did like a, cool down lap, and then started the last chance I had for a flyer, wound it up kind of hitting out of the marks that I wanted to. And then the lap time was like way better than I had anticipated. And I saw the lap time. It was like a minute 34.2, I think. And I knew I had beaten the lap that James had ran earlier that day, but I had no idea what he had done in that session. So I come
Right.
off track. I was hyped. I was like, I can't believe I just did that. Like, had no clue that the car or myself was even capable of getting down to like the low 34s at this track. I thought 35s at that point were like hard, almost unattainable. So I come off, look at race here, and I see that like James and I had both ran basically the exact same lap time that session, and I think I was beating him by 200ths of a second.
Oh, it's significant. I mean,
Yeah, it was just like what? Like, how is this even possible? Like, um. So yeah, it was crazy because not to get the lap time that was way better than I thought the car was capable of, but then to you know beat James, who's like this unattainable, like just
Mhm.
untouchable fast driver, right? And it wasn't like circumstances hurt him. He had gotten more laps on track than I had all weekend. He's been out in the Club TR car, he had been out in the GLTC car. He's like constantly on track. And then the fact that I was able to go just a tiny bit faster than him, I was just like, I was mind blown. Couldn't even believe it happened.
Right.
But he comes running up to our paddock spot and was just like, um, he kept saying like, dude, you're a bad man. It's like, just, high fives and hugs and just like the most encouragement. You know what I mean? It was just super positive. Like
Yeah.
he wasn't, at all upset. He's just, he's a true stand-up guy and a competitor. And he was just, he was like, I'm so proud of you. Like, that's insane. We watched the lap and he was just like shaking his head. He was like, he kept just saying, you're a bad mother effer. Like, you're a bad mother effer. I was just like cracking up because it's just like, coming from him, it was just like crazy. So yeah. And then since that event, that's just kind of been like the, the title that has been like bestowed upon me is like the bad mother effer. So like
Mm-hmm.
in our like club TR chat, it's like, they just call me like the BMF now. And it's just like, it's just been this ongoing joke since then. It's just been kind of funny just because knowing that it came from James. And like I've never like thought of myself as being like, a bad mother effer, but then like him just saying it repeatedly, and now it's just like the class like inside joke is just kind of funny. But yeah, so at that point I was winning. We went out Sunday morning and we were like, okay, like Sunday morning is the next session to like make something happen. And we both go out. Um I got I improved on my lap time, and then I like knocked a tenth off just because the conditions were like that much, that little bit better than they were the evening before. And then I tried to push for another one and I went slower, and then I went slower again. So I just called it and pulled in a little bit early. And I look at Race Hero and he had gone out, he had done a lap or two or three or whatever. He had gotten a good lap time. And then he saw like a 6 minute lap time on Race Hero. And then he went out and did three more laps, all within like a couple hundredths of a second. Like he just, because he saw the lap time that I had ran, saw that I was beating him, and then went out and just fired off like three just like killer laps in a row till the checkered flag. And I was just like, he was trying, you know what I mean? And then I
Yeah.
still wound up beating him again that session, not by, maybe a tenth of a second, not a, big margin at all. And that's when I was kind of just like, wow, like I totally expected him to go out and dig and find, like enough time to like beat me and take that first position back. And he went out and he said he was like, I got 100% out of that car. He's like, I didn't leave an inch of track anywhere. And he's like, I don't think I, left any margin out there. And I'm like, well, like I definitely made some mistakes. So, because I'm not that good of a driver.
Right.
So it kind of shows that like, I guess, like there is something special to these older double wishbone Hondas, but and that track does have kind of a long back straight. So like maybe my car does have a little bit of legs on them. I don't know. But we were kind of comparing like top speed, like mile per hour and stuff, and like everything was just like pretty much identical. And our lap times were damn near identical. And I was just like just barely ahead by that smallest margin. So I was considering packing it up early that weekend and going home, just trying to get home and get to sleep because I had to work really early on Monday morning. Um, and then he tells me that um, him and Josh had talked, and he was like, "Well, we're just going to go out for the last session Sunday. Like it's like 1 p.m. or something like that on Sunday afternoon." He's like, "We're just going to go out and see if we can do anything. We know the conditions are probably going to be worse, but like we're going to give it a shot." So then I'm sitting there thinking, like, man, do I really want to go out for this last session? I feel like it was kind of like in my head, like, every time you say like, "Oh, last try," and then something bad happens, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, man, I don't know if I was like, I don't know how much harder I can push without like, putting it on like the edge of catastrophe. So I was kind of conflicted about going out, but then I was just like, forget it. Like, if I can't do it, if I can't improve, I can't improve.
Right.
But if I sit out and he goes faster and I just don't even try, like I'll kick myself for it. So we both went out. We're both standing in grid and just like cracking up. And he was like, he's like, we're both lunatics for even like doing this. He's like, but this is awesome because this is like a special, like this doesn't happen much in like time attack, like two drivers being this close, like battling it out to the last session of the weekend. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Right.
he's like, this is pretty awesome. Adam Jabay was out there. He's like, just joking around with us in grid. He's like, you guys need to slow down. Like, no,
That
Can't
sounds
do
like
that, sir. Sorry.
sounds like Adam.
Yeah. So we go out and um managed to improve by another hundredth of a second. And then he went like, I don't know, 10th or something slower. So the last session of the day, and I still managed to improve in the worst conditions. So I knew that there was even more time out there on the table. And then he wasn't able to improve, and that pretty much sealed the deal for that event. And then I guess he like hopped in the toter, his like, toter home and just like drove off right after the session because he was like in a rush to get the most sport for an event they had like the next day or something crazy. He's a madman.
He is.
But yeah, so he like calls me while he's like driving away down the road. And he was like, "Oh, don't think I left. He didn't stick around for the podium ceremony." He's like, "Don't think I left out of like, saltiness or anything." He's like, "I just wanted to call you and like congratulate you and like, dude, he's like that was awesome." And he's like, you totally deserve it, all that." So, like after the first two events this season, like kind of not being like being the results I wanted, but not feeling like I earned those results. And then actually, you know, taking that win like legitimately
Mm-hmm.
was a massive boost in, I guess, confidence, and like really just knowing like, okay, I do have what it takes to run at the front of this group
Right.
if I can really just like, just focus and lock in and push.
Or at least you know that like it's touchable, right? It's not like,
Yeah,
oh my God, James
yeah.
is out there,
Right.
we're second place now. So, you got a chance and it's
Yeah.
it's a fight.
Yeah, it was very eye-opening because, like up until that point I didn't think it was, attainable to even run at the pace he was. So I was just like, wow, like really can't even believe that just happened. But, I just was just riding on that high, you know what I mean? Like just getting
Mm-hmm.
getting that congratulations and, you know, support and encouragement from him and like everybody else in the class. And like it seemed like yeah, maybe I'm exaggerating in my mind, but it seemed like there's so many people at that event that were kind of like paying attention to the battle between us because it was like, oh, like somebody's beating James Houghton this event. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's like I came off track after the last session of the weekend. I'm rolling through the hot pits and everybody like all the people that were standing in the hot pits were just clapping. And I was like, that was just a crazy moment to see that. I'm like, wow, these people are like they know what's going on because time attack isn't always the easiest thing to follow if you're not like,
Mm-hmm.
directly paying attention. But all these people were paying attention and then they just saw that, like I didn't even know what lap time James had done at that point in that session, whether had gone faster than me or not. And I pull off track and they're all just clapping. And I'm like, I must have just done it. Like,
Yeah.
so that was a really cool feeling.
Sounds pretty
So
awesome.
yeah, it's definitely like the highlight of the entire season, or maybe even like the entire like past 4 years of driving on track, to be quite honest. Like it's just, finally like drove with the I guess the potential and the performance that I had always like hoped that I would, kind of get to at one point. You know what I mean? I've been pushing for the past 3 years to work up to pace and catch up to the rest of the fast guys in this class. Like I've always just kind of been like a P5, P6 guy, and then just to be running at the front and like legitimately have that pace and not just be like, you know, getting lucky or whatever. It's
Mm-hmm.
just, it's a cool feeling, but
For sure.
still trying to wrap my brain around it even now,
Mm-hmm.
But so anyway, after that we go to Lime Rock. And Lime Rock is another one of my favorite, top three favorite tracks. Um, but very high risk, and it's historically been very intimidating for me to try and put together a fast lap there because of how high risk and high commitment that place is.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um,
And
the
such a short
previous,
lap, like a hundredths matter.
yeah, right. And it's the tiniest little mistake can cost you the entire lap, and there's nowhere to make it up. So it's like everything has to be perfect. So you go through Big Bend and you don't see like, those 2 tenths that you're looking for, you might as well just abort the lap and like cool it down and go for the next one. But
The next one's coming really quick though, so you don't have to wait very long.
yeah. So I did a ton of laps in the sim and everything, where it kind of like, all season long before every track this year, I've been just really, um, just putting a bunch of sim time before events and between events, just trying to mentally prepare, studying a bunch of people's laps. I look at, a lot of like the NASA guys. There's like, you know, like TT5 and ST4 guys that all run like pretty similar lap times as our class. So, I watch these guys' laps on YouTube, trying to figure out what they're doing and compare that to what I'm doing on the sim, and just trying to do my homework and get myself mentally prepared. And going into Lime Rock, like kind of being a little nervous about pushing there and like putting the car into the wall or something like that. It's just, I like had it in my head that I was like, all right, I gotta push and try and at least get on the podium, but I wasn't expecting like the win, because I know like, the my reservations about pushing there might hold me back. Because like last thing I want to do is put the car on a wall. Like this card is like, it to me, it's not like just an appliance or a tool like a lot of other people
Right.
like think of their race cars. It's just, it has a little bit of sentimental value. I've kind of had it for a while. So it has gotten a little, like banged and bruised up over the years, but I still try and keep it clean, try to keep it nice looking, and hold some sentimental value to me. So I go out first session of that weekend. We always get some kind of like wonky grid order. That's just kind of like a best guess, but it's like a random shuffle of people. And I got stuck in one of the faster groups. I don't know if it was A or B or whatever, but either way, I was like, man, I'm surrounded by cars that are like way too fast, like high powered cars that I didn't think I was going to be able to like match their pace. So, we start this session and I'm like, all right, let me kind of just like get offline, let some of these higher powered cars pass. And I tucked back, a few spots back with some other cars in my class that, were probably going to be similar pace. Got some clear track. And within like 4 laps, I had reset the record that James had set this season before. And I couldn't even like believe what I was seeing on the aim, like on the lap timer. Like I was immediately in like the 58s, like right off the bat, and then I saw 57, and I was like, you gotta be like joking right now. Like it's not even, I don't even believe it. So um we come off that session, and again, James was just like, he's like, you're insane. I was like, I just shrugged my shoulders. Like I didn't know what to say. He was like, you're like the baddest mother effer alive right now. And I'm like, I'm just like laughing because I don't even know how to respond to that, right? So he ended up having some mechanical issues that weekend. We'll just say that.
Yeah, that was a tough weekend.
Yeah. So it ended up getting pretty close between me and Peter Grainberg, who had always been, on the podium. And then for that weekend, we finished basically a tenth apart. And that was another situation where I went out in the last session of the weekend, not really expecting to improve, but I was kind of debating on even going out because I knew the track had gotten like pretty greasy. And then I just like kind of put my head down and clicked off a lap where I just like hit my marks and tried to keep it clean. It ended up being another improvement by, you know, not even a tenth. I think it was just like a few hundredths, but um I saw the lap time and I was like, that's the best I can do. And I tried to do another 2 laps after that and they were slower. So I pulled it in and that was it for the weekend. And then I sat there watching Race Hero while Peter went out and pounded laps and pounded laps and pounded laps, trying to like just find that extra tenth he needed to, knock me off the top. And he just didn't manage to do it. So I was just like, again, just mind blown that, I was able to pull it off at that track where I'd been so like, apprehensive about trying to go fast. So, um, yeah, so that was another one. I mean, that was just another highlight for me because I really like that track, but it's always just been so intimidating to me. You know what I mean? So just trying to get in a lap time there was just, it was just a big accomplishment for me. It's like a East Coast benchmark track.
Yep. It's
So
got no slack in it either. You either
no,
do almost perfect or it's not.
yeah, and it doesn't reward power all that much, it's just
Mm-mm.
a lot of grip and commitment. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I really like that track. It's a lot of fun. Um, so yeah, that was the fourth event for my season. And basically the way the point structure works is like they count, and regardless of how many events you do, they count your best four.
Yep.
So at that point I had 4 wins and 2 class records for a total of 102. Um, and I wasn't planning on doing any more events this season at all. I was like, okay, like that's it for me. I don't like I'm tapped out financially. My friend Evan Weeder that, I'd mentioned already before, he got married the same weekend as PittRace, and I was supposed to be there for that. And then the few events leading up to PittRace, they went to Road America, they went to Audubon. Um, Peter Granberg happened to win all these events, and
Mm-hmm.
I was like, man, like I just had this feeling that like he was gonna go, like, his confidence and pace and consistency has been really improving, like the season over years past. He's had a lot of help from Scott Robertson. It's just clearly
Yep.
like paid dividends. And I was like, man, this kid's really gonna like just flush out these last few events. And mathematically, if he basically won all three of like the remaining events and took 2 more records, which he already had one under his belt, he needed to take 2 more to beat me for the season by 1 point. And I'm like, man, he's really going to twist my arm and force me to go to PittRace and add that fifth event to the season to just defend myself.
Yeah,
And that's what ended up happening.
there's worse things to be done than forcing you to go race at pit race, though. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, it's not like I really wanted to go to Pitt. When I saw it announced on the schedule earlier in the season, I was really looking forward to going to it because it's a track that obviously I hadn't been to before. It's, one of the closer ones in the GridLife
hmm
schedule. It's in PA, even though it's, still 5 hours away.
easy.
But I have not heard anybody say anything bad about that track. Like some of the, the Northeast like NASA guys that I talk to are all just like, yeah, pit race is awesome. Like you have to get there. The facilities are great. The track is super fun. But I'd run a ton of laps there on the Assetto Corsa, and I could definitely see the appeal. So I was just like really looking forward to going. And then when Evan Weeder was like, hey, like this is our wedding date, I was like, all right, I kind of just like wrote it off and was like, I'm going to this wedding, right? And then like, just seeing how the season unfolded and everything, it got to the point where I was just like, man, dude, like I had to kind of like we had to have that conversation where I was like, man, like I really just can't let Peter just take this from me. And he's like, I totally understand. Like I would do the same thing. He's like, just go.
Not at his
And
wedding, just to make sure, so we keep the wedding going. He would not skip his own wedding to go to
no,
Okay.
right.
They're
His
trying
wife
to
would
keep our friends married here. It's been like 2 weeks,
his wife would kill him, right? But yeah, no, he kind of gave me the blessing to be like, yeah, like go, like, he's like, you've been working for this for years. Like this is kind of a once in a lifetime thing. He's like, just do me a favor and just win. He's like, don't let Peter win. He's like, just make sure you bring it home. And I'm like, I'll do my best. Like, no guarantees, right?
right.
Um, so yeah, the leading up to that event, I kind of had a lot of like pressure on myself because I was just like, I really have to perform this event to not let him win. And it was, like every event leading up to this one, I had kind of just gone in with like low expectations and try and, I like to keep expectations low. So that way, if I do exceed them, it's just a positive. You're not starting out
Sure.
with high expectations and then not meeting them. And, I feel like for my own, like, I guess mentality, it puts me on a better trajectory to be more successful if I just keep my expectations low going in. So
Yeah.
this one was kind of like the opposite. Like I was, for weeks leading up to this event, I was in my head, you know, like probably focusing too hard on the results and not, you
Process.
know, yeah. So, I mean, I did do obviously a ton of, video and sim preparation and everything. So I felt like I had done my homework and probably spent more time than was beneficial just grinding out on the simulator because I feel like at some point it's just there's very little returns because it doesn't directly translate. But regardless, I felt like I had to put the time in, so I did. And then I get there, I did the test day on Thursday with ASM,
Hmm.
and thank God I did, because that track's so technical, but it's also like it's pretty fast and there's some high commitment spots, especially like 14, like
Yep.
that turns nuts.
Lots of blind turns. Yep.
Oh man, it's so much fun though. It's like, and now it's become one of my favorite tracks. I think from like the first session, I was like, this place is awesome. Like, it's now my new favorite. Just chucking the car back and forth through the S's, like what is it, that 3 through 6 complex, like
Yep.
down the hill into
Down
that
the
ditch
hill.
and up the, oh man, it's so fun. Um, yeah,
Got
it took me
a
all
lot
day
of.
on Thursday to, what's that?
It's got a lot of almost every type of turn you can think of.
Yeah, exactly. It's got everything that, it's got fast sweepers, it's got tight corners, it's got just, I don't know of another track that I've been to. I mean, there's probably other ones out there that I can't think of right now, but just like the way you have to really like chuck the car back and through the S's, but it's all like not they're not all symmetrical, so the speed changes and like the rhythm is, it's like a little weird.
Hmm.
It's just, I don't know, that whole section is super fun. And like once I kind of build up confidence to really just kind of like break late enough into what is that, 7, where that first right hander where you go into them.
7 after the hill. Yeah.
Yeah, that turn to kind of like trail the car all the way into the backside of that
Hmm.
next corner and then flick it back to the right without like using any brakes, just like throttle management through the whole thing, just chucking the car back and forth. The coolest feeling ever. And just, I just want to go back and do that. It just, I could just lap that car like all, or lap that track all day long and just have a blast,
We got a
not
couple
get
more
bored at
weeks
all.
before it snows. We can do this. We can get something
Oh
together.
man, it's too far. I'm tapped out too. Like financially, I'm done. Like I just, I am in like,
Financially and fiscally. Physically,
yes,
sorry.
yes, mentally, all of the above. So yeah, we did the test day. Didn't work up to pace as well as I had expected in the test day. So I still kind of ended that Thursday with some apprehension about being able to, like have anything for the competition, because me and Peter had kind of gone back and forth and compared, lap times between like, different stuff we'd seen on the internet, whatever. Kind of have an idea like, okay, we kind of expected to be in like the 34s or the 54s,
I
sorry,
was gonna say if you're
34s,
in a
whatever. That would be
34 and
insane. Whoa.
wow,
I think what
34.
was the fastest lap time that weekend was what, a 43 or something crazy like that. I don't know.
There was a couple big cars there, but
Yeah, that like LMP thing, that like
mhm.
that thing was insane. That thing came up behind me out of nowhere and scared the crap out of me going into 16.
Yeah,
There's that little tiny stretch between 15 and 16 going into the kink, and I see this thing in my mirror just like appear. And I was like,
yeah.
oh crap, what do I do?
You're
But
you're, you're not gonna out throttle him, that's for sure.
no. Yeah, I just got offline and just he zipped through the inside of that kink so fast. Um so yeah, didn't quite feel confident about pace on Thursday.
It's
Threw
it's
on,
it's not an easy track to get the first time.
no.
If you can get like 80, maybe 90% fairly quickly, but that last little bit's gonna take a little bit.
Yeah.
I think the other thing you had to worry about too was I think this is only the second time GridLife was there, so the lap record was more vulnerable than someplace like Gingerman, where it's every year for 10 years. This is kind of
Yep.
another, that's almost like it's not a free point, but it's a more capable of getting point.
Yeah, and we both kind of had that expectation going in that like, whichever one of us won the event was going to take the record by default, because we had seen the lap times were like pretty soft. So
Hmm.
we were like, yeah, if we don't take the record, there's something wrong. But at the same time, it's like, okay, like basically at that point, it was like do or die. So,
Right.
um, yeah, we went in the Friday morning. We woke up Friday morning and it was like frigid.
It was cold.
And yeah, I slept in a tent on top of the tow vehicle as I usually do, and woke up and it was just like my face was an ice cube. But see, I was like debating on like going out that session or not. I was like, man, is it gonna be too cold to go fast? And I was like, whatever, like just go out, get a banker in, and come in. I threw on some sticky, like fresh sticker tires. And thankfully I did that. thankfully I didn't skip the session because that session wound up being the best lap time I got all weekend. And that ended up being the lap that morning was what won the event for me. Because then as that day progressed, the sessions through the middle of the afternoon just kept getting slower and slower.
Mm-hmm.
And then we kept looking at the weather, and it looked like morning was going to rain, and that was going to be our last session of the weekend was Sunday morning. So we were like, if this rain hits on Sunday morning, like Saturday morning is going to be the last shot at getting a lap in. Um, you know, after at the end of the day, Friday, Pete was still a second behind, I think, but I knew that, it was his first session on the track. He didn't do the test day. So I was like, he's going to find a big chunk of time.
Yeah.
The next day after he kept going out all day Friday, getting laps in, just pounding all the laps he could. So I knew he was going to find time. So we go out Saturday morning. Again, I had a ton of pressure on myself sitting in grid. I could feel the nerves like starting to work up because I was like, this is it. This is like the whole season is going to come down to this session right here. And I probably got like way too much into my head, which is a little like uncharacteristic. Usually like in grid, I'm just kind of like, I usually just talk to people in grid, kind of keep myself out of the car for a little bit. And then once I hop in at like the 5 minute mark and, strap in and everything, then I'm just like focused and I go out and do a lap. But this one I sat in the car for, like 10, 15 minutes in grid thinking, it felt like an eternity just, stewing in my head. So I think that was, kind of a bad move on my part.
Mm-hmm.
But so we go out. First couple laps ended up like that LMP car came up on me that session, so that ruined that lap. I got a weird point by, and then that car came up, and it was like the end of the lap that like 15, 16, 17 were just trashed. So I didn't get a lap. So I already got frustrated like right off the bat. Like first flyer I tried, I was just immediately just like just like crap. This is already kind of like a crap show, and let my frustrations get to me a little bit too much. And then I think I was like, all right, I'm going to take a cool down, tuck behind Stan, who was sitting P2 at that point. So I let him go ahead, gave him a pretty decent gap and followed him for a cool down and then, started another flyer and was on a pretty good lap. I could feel that it was like pretty quick relative to, the laps I run at that point. The grip level was there. So I was pushing it through the S's a little bit more. And then I started to notice I was catching up to him towards like the end of the S's and coming through 14. The gap between us had shrunk a bit. And then like we go through the kink, and normally I have to kind of breathe off the throttle through the kink to be able to even get the car slowed down quick enough into
The first one? Okay, the second one.
Yeah, sorry, the 16, the second kink, the right hand, right before that braking zone, right?
Yep.
So yeah, normally I'm flat through the left, and then I just breathe off to enough to kill like 2 or 3 miles an hour through the right, and then
Get a
have to
little
hammer
weight
the
up front
brakes.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. And then usually I'm braking like a little bit before that 2 marker.
Mm-hmm.
So this time we had, I want to say it was like 3 car length or so gap between me and Stan in front of me. And I didn't breathe off through the kink. I just was like in full kill mode, not even like, probably not thinking rationally. I was really just like, all right, I got to make this lap count. And I just stayed flat through the kink, didn't get on the brakes until basically at the 2 marker, which is a little bit later than I normally do.
Right.
And then carrying a little bit extra speed and braking a little bit too late. He got on the brakes at like a normal, reasonable spot. And then I just like could not get the car slowed down as quickly as I had hoped. And next thing I know, like the gap between me and him had shrunk to like nothing in that braking zone. And I was like, crap, I'm going to rear end him. And it got to a point where I was like, either I had to dodge one way or the other. And just out of reflex, I dodged to the right because that's where all the surface is.
Right.
But that, of course, was right at turn in point. So I ended up like connecting right there at turn in. And like my front left wheel hit his rear left wheel and like spun him around. And I went off. And like at that moment, I was just like, that's it. I threw away the whole season right there, and I just crashed one of my friends, and like there's just like the worst feeling, you know what I mean? Like I couldn't believe that I made that big of a mistake like that. It was just stupid. It was like the whole like Dunning-Kruger curve right there that you hear
Right.
like DJ and Tom talk about on Lizard
Mhm.
Brains. It was just like just I found my like valley of despair real quick right there. Like just
Yeah.
went from the peak of confidence down to the bottom real fast. And then somehow miraculously Stan's car wasn't damaged beyond the wheel that I contacted. I don't even know how it happened still. Like didn't even scuff any body paint or anything. I thought I had like crushed his quarter panel in or something, and somehow
Yeah.
his car was just like untouched. They ended up just throwing spare wheels on the back because I guess somehow the two rear wheels were cracked, and then it didn't even seem like the alignment was off or anything. They just threw new like spare wheels on, and he was back out the next session just pounding laps. So
Well,
that was a
that's
relief, but
that's better.
yeah, it was stressful. Like I got out of the car and went out to talk to him, and I was still really upset, and I was kind of just expecting him to like rip into me, and you know, um, he was just like the most like gracious, stand up, understanding person. Like I would hope that I had enough like I don't know, just grace and self control in a situation like that to handle it the way he did.
Yeah.
Because like I was in a pretty low spot, and then he was just like, hey, like don't sweat it, the car's okay, like this stuff happens, we're both out there pushing. And so that was just a huge relief that he like he wasn't
Yeah.
like massively pissed off at me, but then also like the car wasn't damaged. Like he was just like, the car's fine. And I'm like, what? What do you mean the car's fine? He was like, look at it. And I'm like, I couldn't believe my eyes. Like I was just like, there's no way his body work isn't damaged or anything. It was insane.
I mean, it was unweighted at that point on the track, and so
Yeah.
that probably helped
I
a
know
bit.
it. Right. And it was a pretty low, the lowest speed part of the track, and our closing speed wasn't like super fast. You know what I mean? I
Yeah, if
definitely
it
like,
was further back, that would have been a mess.
yeah, I definitely bumped him with some force. It wasn't like a bump draft tap. It was it was a pretty like solid hit, but um yeah, I was just lucky that I just hit his wheel and nothing else. And
Hmm.
my car was pretty banged up. I had some, bent suspension pieces, a broken wheel, pushed in fender, broken headlight. Mostly cosmetic, except for like the suspension, like the lower front lower control arm was pushed back, and the whole wheel was like shoved back into the wheel well. So at that point, I was like, I'm done for the weekend. And I thought I had basically lost the event at that point, and lost the season championship, and everything was just done until somebody had actually came up to me, and like we were talking and looking at Stan's car, they mentioned that Peter had basically matched my lap time, but I was still ahead by 3 thousandths of a second.
That's all you need. That's
Yeah,
plenty. That's plenty.
that's about it, right? Like,
Plenty.
I was just again mind blown that you know the margin was that tight, but then somehow it was still ahead. Yeah, I just couldn't believe it. I was like,
Hmm.
how lucky am I that I make a mistake like that and just throw everything away basically, and I'm still just barely holding on to it by the skin of my teeth. So spend the rest of that day kind of moping around. I didn't really like have any intention or urgency to like fix the car or try and figure out if it was even possible to be fixed. I just, was just I'm gonna sit on the hilltop and watch my friends drive around and like whatever, and just hang out. No, I was just trying to like pull myself out of my crappy mood, but it was just everybody else around me was just, you know, doing what they could to try and just like lift me up and encourage me to figure out if the car could be fixed and get back out there. They were like, dude, this is the season. Like you have to take the car apart. Like, let's look at it. Let's figure out, there's Hondas around. There's somebody has to have parts, like whatever, we'll figure it out. So, with some people twisting my arm, like one of which my girlfriend was just kind of like, she didn't want to push me too much because she didn't want me to like, I guess, get mad at her or whatever. So she went up to like my other friends that were there and were like, look, like she was like, you guys have to go up and convince him to like do something. So like they all kind of like rallied together and gave me like a pep talk. And James Houghton came around and gave me a pep talk. And just everybody, doing what they could, like kind of set me back in the trajectory of trying to get the car fixed and back out there. And then people came up with parts, and we came up with a plan to go get the tires swapped onto my spare wheels that weren't broken. A couple friends ran to Home Depot to get a plywood for a new splitter. Um, another friend had like splitter brackets that I needed, and then my good friend Luke ran his last session on Saturday and decided that he was going to pack it up early and go home Sunday morning instead of running his final session. And he was like, dude, like we basically have, very similar cars, and he has like, very top notch parts on his car. And he was like, whatever you need off of my car, just take it. And I'm like you're not going to drive tomorrow? And he's like, no, I'm going to pack up early and go home and spend time with the family. He's like, so whatever you need off of my car, like, let's get your car fixed and get you back out there. He's like, we'll figure it out later or whatever. So, after him kind of like twisting my arm for a little bit, I was like, all right, like, fine, let's do this. Right. So we took his car apart, transferred all the suspension bits that I needed from his car to my car, used, like all the parts that other people had donated and everything. We were up until 1 a.m. or so, putting the car back together, got it to the point where the car was drivable, but the alignment was still like way out of whack. I had like an inch of toe out in the front on the left side where I hit. So some guys that I didn't even know at this point were like, hey, like you can come use our garage space that we rented, and we have toe plates and everything. So they were just like, come, at 1:30 in the morning, come do your alignment in our garage. I'm like, all right, like, you guys are awesome. So did that. Um, tried to get some sleep that night and couldn't sleep at all. So I ended up waking up the next morning at like 5 a.m. I get up and just start kind of moseying around, took a shower and stuff, and started trying to just like look over the car some more, make sure that I was like confident in it being able to like go out and run. And when the sun came up, um, tried to get this car started to like warm up, and it wouldn't start and stay running. And it was a problem I was having the previous night too, like trying to get to and from that person's garage space. The car wouldn't stay running. The battery kept dying. So it seemed like the alternator was either fried or there was a pop fuse or something. So there was like, despite, putting the car back together, all the suspension parts and everything that we had to replace, at some point the alternator had decided to die. And didn't even realize it until, Sunday morning. We have an hour left until the session, and we're scrambling around trying to see if we can get the car to stay running. And we found a wire that had pulled out of a pin. So we got, yeah, it was just so random, and we spotted it. And then we wound up getting pins from across the paddock, and then, fixed the wire, and then the car still wasn't charging. So the only thing I could think of at that point was just the alternator was dead. And with 20 minutes left until the session was about to start, I had no time to even replace an alternator, because you got to remove like intake manifold and all this stuff. And I was like, well, like that's it. After all that, effort we went through the day before, and it was all just like, that was it. It was over. And, we're looking at the weather, and it looked like the rain that had originally been forecasted was going to miss us. So I was like, great, like that's it. Peter's going to go out. He's going to run faster, and he's going to beat me, and everything's going to be, season win's going to be out of my hands at that point. And then, not a minute later, after the car was running for a few minutes, and then it shut itself off. And then like a minute later, it just starts pouring. So the lead that I had from the first session of the weekend ended up sticking and was locked in by the rain by 0.003 of a second.
That's plenty. That's all you need.
Yeah.
So looking at the standings, though, if Peter would have won, I don't think he would have passed you.
He would have won by 1 point. So he would have gotten the class record.
Right.
And another 25 points so basically that would have been his fourth win and his third record. And since it's only your best 4 count,
Ah,
he would have
okay.
had 4 wins and 3 records, and I would have finished with 4 wins and 2 records.
Right. I'm not counting the swap thing. Okay. All right. Because I was
Yeah,
looking at
yeah.
the
So one of
standings and it was
right,
just the flip flop mattered. Because I
right.
knew
One
you
of
were
the
pretty much set, and it was whether you got an extra point or not because it didn't matter. You'd already won your 4. So,
yeah,
all
yeah.
right.
So that 5th win just ended up replacing one of the other ones that I had ran
It's
earlier that season.
it's late and I don't have Excel on, so my math skills are somewhat impacted. It's fine.
Yeah.
So big man on campus wins this event at PittRace. Looked like you had a pretty good time about it.
It was, yeah. Overall, I mean, it was a roller coaster. You know, it was just from one extreme to the other emotionally, and I was just
Mm-hmm.
mentally fried and drained physically. But just to like knowing that I came out on top and won, it was just like surreal.
Yeah.
But it still kind of felt like I had, because of the incident, because of the crash and everything, it
Yep.
felt like I had put a stain on like the whole
Mm-hmm.
season. You know what I mean? Like all my success, up until that point was all great, and like then it's just that happened to happen in the last event, and it was just kind of like, man, it put, just a big, like
Yeah. It's a bummer.
just yeah, I don't even know how to put it. It's just I felt like I just like, like tainted the whole thing by that. You know what I mean? It's just
Well, anybody who knows you and knows
disappointing.
that paddock knows you didn't come there that weekend to, plant your front end in one of your friend's cars. So it's not
Yeah,
the intent at all. And
exactly.
obviously you've been whacking people all around the country this year, taking them out whenever you had to. So,
Yeah, just pit maneuvering everybody.
exactly, it's easy that way. So grand champion, what's the plan now? You've conquered all, you're moving to you know, Beverly Hills and living large, or you gonna club TR again? You gonna, you know, go up the Sunday Cup? You gonna go GLTCing? You gonna retire and just instruct people on how it is to be a winner? What are you thinking?
I feel like if I went to Sunday Cup, I would get the floor mopped with me, to be completely honest.
I
Those
did.
guys get so much out of those cars. It's insane.
I have secured my last place position in my Sunday Cup debut already. So yeah, I get you. Don't worry. I don't even think my car was compliant. They were still crushing me. I
Oh,
think I
wow.
I think I forgot to put the ballast in. Although I carry my own personal ballast, so I may have been okay anyway. But I don't know who was the
Those guys are
driver.
so fast.
They are. There's not a lot of gap left for what they can do.
No.
So what's the plan? Serious? Where are you going? Where are you going?
Um, but yeah, I think the plan for next season is to at least do another 3 or 4 events in Club TR.
Hmm.
Um, the the goal for, beyond that, I want to get into some form of wheel to
Think he just lost his phone. He's going to let me do an impersonation. He's going to get into some form of wheel to wheel, whether that be GridLife or with some NASA events, maybe. I don't know. I'm hoping his phone comes back to life because we've been on a long time. Let's see how we doing. I can vamp for a while, but eventually you guys will get sick of hearing me. So anyway, season results: Falcon Club TR standings for 2024. Evan, our guest, who's not here right now, 103 points. Second place, Peter Granberg, hopefully future podcast guest, 99 points, just 4 behind. James Houghton, who is one of those aliens, hopefully future podcast guest, had a little bit of a rougher season, still comes in third though. Mario, we talked about a little bit, 73. James had 84, by the way. Stan Feingold came in at 73, tied with Mario, and Fez Babar, podcast host and open invite to do a podcast home and home or just come on ours. Came in sixth. Jeremy Bailey tied for sixth. I guess technically they have a tie separator, but same points. Evan Weeder, who got married and chose to do that as opposed to go into a race. So, he can't get a top 7. So he's eighth, 58 points. And let's see, Ian Levin, 54 points. And Osmith Mohammed finishes the top 10. Not that everybody else doesn't deserve to be talked about, but those are your top 10. And I think his phone is officially dead. So if that ends our podcast. Hope everybody liked it. Great. Oh, he's coming back in. He's come back in. I've been vamping the whole time. We might have a chance. Evan, you gotta unmute. There we go.
Sorry, my phone died.
I was gonna say his phone died. I vamped for as long as I could. I just did the top 10 standings, so I'm not insulting anybody from Daniel Persing down. I just eventually I had to say, okay, I'm out of vamping. So welcome back.
Yeah, my fault. My phone's telling me to shut up and stop being so long-winded, but
That's okay. We
I'm
don't
back.
mind. It's quite an accomplishment you had. Plus, it's good to hear the good and the bad. Because even though you walk away national champion for the year, it was far from I went to track, I won. I went to the track and I won. I went to the track and I won. That's kind of James
Yeah.
Houghton's way of doing things, but that's just, that's okay.
Sometimes I don't know. That guy is. I mean, especially back in his unlimited days, he had some of the
Yeah.
roughest weekends I could even imagine.
Those unlimited cars, man, they're unlimited in both up and down because
Yeah,
they don't break little, they break big. But
you
anyway,
need an unlimited budget to be able
exactly.
to do that.
Exactly. And skill and everything else. So thinking about it while I was vamping,
Mhm.
I don't know that we ever said what your car is. I know what it is, but just in case we didn't or we did.
So it's a 2001 Acura Integra
Hmm.
with a K24 engine swap out of '06 Acura TSX.
Okay.
Got a six-speed gearbox from the eighth gen Civic Si, and every nut and bolt in the car has been touched and replaced, and sphericals everywhere, Fortunato shocks, a bunch of geo correction, all the fancy bits, a little bit of aero, basically like whatever the max I can do to fit the limit of the rules in Club TR. I've tried to
Yeah.
make sure I left no stone unturned, but otherwise yeah, it's not super complicated. It's a pretty just bolt-on car. There's nothing that nobody else can replicate.
I mean, for the
Um,
times you do, it looks like you should have had to do more.
it's better than the sum of its parts, right?
Yeah,
It's like one of
exactly.
those things where it's, not to like tout myself as some, capable car builder or setup person or anything, but I feel like I've gotten the car to a point where I like the way it drives and turns and doesn't do anything, crazy to catch me out. Um, and I built up a lot of confidence in it, so that's kind of what you need to be able to like do a really good lap time is just have
Yep.
the utmost confidence in the car and its behavior. And I
For
feel like
for sure.
after however many years I've had the car and been driving on track for a few years, I've finally gotten to the point where I'm really leaning on it. I'm driving into some amount of slip angle, which was something that I don't think I really clicked in my brain until the past, I
There's
think
a
it's
whole
like
podcast about that if you need it.
2 years.
I've heard there's a podcast. I haven't heard it much this summer, by the way, Adam.
Yeah,
Anyway,
right.
so
Hopefully this winter. He said
yeah,
that they were gonna,
I know. And it's not like he's not doing other things.
yeah, you got to cut the guy some slack, really.
Yeah. So we left off, I think your phone said, Bill, shut up. Somewhere in the middle of your answer for you were going to do some more racing in Club TR, and then you were looking for wheel to.
Oh yeah, wheel to wheel at some
Yes.
point. Um, yeah, I was saying that like I really like GLTC. I like the culture,
Hmm.
the rule set and everything. I just don't know if um I'd be capable of running like a full season there because
Right.
of all the travel and stuff involved.
Yep.
Not that it would really be like, any different than the travel I'm doing now, but it just seems like the budget and everything involved in doing GLTC when trying to be like really a solo endeavor without having like a team of people is really
Right.
hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
The
looking at what
level's
like
crazy.
Katil does, how he's just like, there by himself all weekend and still running at the front. It's just it boggles my mind. But it's just one of those things where it would, take me a few years to really, I guess, work myself up to pace in that type of, scenario. So that to me that it seems like the most logical step forward. I've
Yeah.
kind of been fascinated with just wheel to wheel in general and like learning racecraft and everything.
Yep.
And I just don't know what class or what series I really want to commit to at this point. I was thinking, if I could build a car the way I want to, it would fit into either GLTC or ST4 with NASA, and
Right.
maybe be able to hop back and forth between the two, do a race at NGMP and then
Mm-hmm.
do a race at Lime Rock with GridLife or whatever. So, I think that's kind of like the 3 to 5 year plan
Cool. And
is to
that's what Nick's doing right now, Nick Barbado. So
yeah. Yeah. So
he's
maybe just get some more seat time in Club TR. I was thinking, the past couple of years, I've really been thinking about just kind of taking a break, taking a step back, doing fewer events, trying to recover financially, get myself set up to, make like a full run at,
big
some wheel to
push.
wheel series. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this season, I'm glad I didn't take the step back that I was contemplating last
No,
winter.
no, you took a different step. I think it was
Yeah.
forward. Nicely done, sir. Uh,
Um, yeah.
we have
So,
we have a listener question that
okay.
texted me during the podcast, so we're gonna go with code name Jaime.
Is
Uh,
this the same listener that requested me to be on the
no,
show in the
no,
first place?
different one, different one. This
Okay.
is this
All
is
right.
code name Jaime. I could tell you who the other code name is, but code name Jaime says, is he going to come to Laguna Seca in 2025?
Oh my God, that would be bucket list, like absolute bucket list for me. But if I do, it would be just to hang out. I don't know. I can't get my car there to drive. It's
That's the
just too
hard part.
expensive.
The
Yeah.
parts, the tools, in order to, if you're going to go all that way, you want to be prepped.
Yep.
And getting the car there is one thing, but getting everything to be prepped, because we wanted to do the Thunderhill 25.
Yeah.
Hopefully it comes back. But
Hopefully.
I'm just like, how I got the car's ready, we're ready. I got the parts, but they don't magically deliver
Yeah.
themselves to the track. So
There's only thousands of miles to go.
yeah, and a couple lumps. I mean, we complain about going to pit race sometimes. There's some lumps in the way of going there. So yeah,
That's true.
I
I
don't
don't
know.
think my tow vehicle would make it all the way there and back. It would.
But that's the other thing. If you tow, it's like a week each
Right.
way. Because
Right.
I
Or
don't drive when I'm towing. I don't drive like 15, 16-hour days. I do, you
yeah.
know, somewhat more. I don't know, but when it,
Yeah. Him and Carlos out there were bugging me to come out this year to just hang out, and I really wanted to. It's just, I just didn't have the resources to even fly out there just to hang out. It's just I
yeah,
was strapped thin towards the end of the season, and
yeah.
so I mean, I'll get back there out there eventually. I just don't know when it'll happen.
I mean, if you want, I can do an impersonation of you for an answer. Well, codename Jaime. Maybe I'd go out there to go spend some time with you if you were to come out here and take the free seat that has been offered to you in an endurance car. Hmm? Hmm?
See? Yeah.
Yeah, right back at you, codename Jaime. Anyway, let's see. What else do we have? Anything that you think is coming or that you'd like to see come to the time attack format or changes in your class? This is your chance to
Ooh.
lobby because we know Adam Jabay does not listen to the podcast. I mean, he better have better things to do.
I don't know, it's hard to say. I really like the parity that we have in the class between so many, like such a variety of cars. It does seem like the Honda K series, the K24 specifically, has just been kind of the dominating like easy button. It's like all
Hmm.
of the front running cars are K swapped, but I'm not complaining about that. I don't really
Not when
have
you
many
have one.
complaints. Right. Yeah, it's like that's the thing. It's like anything that I would kind of lobby and petition for would just get shut down by the fact that like they're just going to say you don't need the help. So you don't
Yeah,
need any like rule
true.
changes. I do wish there was some sort of like similar tire rule, like an average rule like GLTC has, where they can
Mm-hmm.
run like a 245 average, but that means, like a 265 in the front,
So you could
225 in the
stagger. Yeah.
rear. Yeah. So like, but that plays into their power to weight and all their modifiers, or we don't have any of those rules to, hold us back either. So it would really just be like me saying, I want to run 265s in the front of my car because I think I'd go faster and it would be fun. But then it's like, I don't really have a leg to stand on, so.
Last thing somebody thinks you need is to go faster.
Exactly. Yeah. So they're going to try and like chop me down probably. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we'll see what
Yeah.
kind of rules they come up with to nerf me.
Well, it's you're doing okay when you have a racing series that was originally started out as people from the Honda meet.
Yes.
You're probably not going to do too bad. So I was
Yeah,
just
we get a lot of flack for the front wheel drive, like
uh-huh.
K-swap guys. They're like, "Oh, the class was made for you," and I'm like, "Yeah, but try and come with logic where it's like, well, your cars are plenty capable too, but it's like the class really was designed to give like our cars and cars like mine a place to play. So
Mm-hmm.
it was formed around me, and I can't really really complain about anything else in the rules. Like they've been good about changing the rules, making them a little bit more open and free, kind of a little bit each year, kind of based on I guess what they saw that the class and the drivers wanted. Like they haven't just given us free reign, but there's been like little things with like interior and like minimum weights and like allowing Lexan and stuff like that to allow some of the heavier cars to get down the minimum weight. All those things have kind of been like opened up in the past couple of years and compared to how the class started. So I think it's just been continually moving in like a good direction, and just parity has been getting tighter and tighter.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. We'll see what they do over winter with the rule changes, but I doubt it's going to be much, to be honest with you. I think Adam's pretty happy with it.
Okay. And final question I'm trying to find on the social medias where it came in. We had one more question for you. It's could be the most difficult one of the day. So,
Uh-oh.
strap in. Is uh is it true that the winner of Club TR is automatically added to be a host for Gears and Gasoline?
That is not true at all.
Not true. Okay. All right. Well,
That is
future
not
podcast
true at all.
guests, we're gonna track them down too. But
Yeah, you should definitely get those two guys on. They're a riot, man. They're
I
they're
think
really
they're in the middle of
funny.
Utah right now. So
Yeah, right.
as we speak. So at least that's what it appeared to be this morning. So anyway. All right, sir. I have done my duty. I have earned my brake pads. I've earned my rotors. I have done what I was sworn to do. And yeah, a great episode. I hope everybody enjoyed it as much as I did. It was great to finally put a name and a face and a voice together. And we can't wait to have you back on.
I'd love to come back on. Hopefully
Yep.
we meet in the paddock at some point
We
next
can do
season.
that. We can do that. Oh, I forgot opportunities. Anybody you need to shout out or any sponsors you need to say thank you to or
I mean, first and foremost, my girlfriend, Alicia, she's my biggest supporter. She has been,
wise choice there.
Yeah,
First
right. I
choice.
gotta get the brownie points, but
Yeah.
I felt bad because I did a podcast like what was it last week with some friends of mine, and I didn't give her the credit she deserved, and I was like, damn it. But I was also like having trouble remembering like the actual companies that supported me at the same time. So I was like, all right.
I know.
So now I'm getting a rebate this time.
There you go.
So
We
yeah,
we
her
all
first and
aspire to the
foremost.
level of NASCAR drivers who can just sit there and I like to
Rattle them
thank
off.
M&Ms and Prestone and 7-Eleven Slurpees, whatever.
Right.
Whatever. All right,
But
sorry
yeah,
for
we got
interrupting.
a big Fortune Auto sticker on the side of the car
You
and some
do.
Fortune Auto shocks underneath that have done me amazingly well this season. Um,
So you're
Acuity,
halfway to Gears and Gasoline. You got the Fortunato.
yeah, right. Um, Acuity Instruments, I've been associated with them for I don't know the past 3 years or so. I've gotten to know all their drivers and everything has just have become basically like my track family. They're
Hmm.
that's we have such a good group of people, and it just we keep adding people into the group, and it's just it's been awesome to be a part of. It's been great to have all those guys take me under their wing, with like parts and support from the company. Season we had Hawk come on board with some brake pads, so that was super helpful.
Nice.
I've been running their DTC 70s on the front of the car for a few years now. Pretty aggressive pad, but I don't run a brake booster, so that aggressive bite from the 70s is like perfect. We have Y'all Speed. They've held me out with like a little bit of coaching and data analysis and stuff. They're based out of Chicago, so they're not really local. So I really only see those guys when we go out to events, but they're always, like, hey, like let's look at data and stuff and try and figure out how to make you faster. So that's been, good help from them. We got Unit 2 Fab. He does probably most notable for his oil pan and baffles and stuff like that. He helped me out with his Big Daddy Elite pan that is, it's a monstrous capacity, but man, that thing, the oil pressure in my car is now like rock solid, whereas before I was having, some dips like through the downhill at Lime Rock. I could hear the thing in video just drop out of VTEC from a low oil pressure. And at PittRace, I had no issues. I guess pulled data and looked at the oil pressure, and it was just solid, like 70 psi, 80 psi across the board for the entire session. So that's a huge improvement. And then we have Home Developments, who these clever guys from Australia have come up with a lot of very intelligent solutions for geo correction and bump steer correction and like a whole slew of other parts for these older Hondas and stuff. So their parts on the car have been like instrumental in getting it to behave and handle the way I like, combined with the Fortunato shocks, of course, but like the geo correction stuff is like a game changer for these cars. So, huge thanks to them for making that stuff and helping me out with, whatever parts and replacements and stuff that I need. So, I don't know if I'm forgetting anybody. I think that's it.
It's okay. Well, if anybody reaches out to one of those sponsors, tell them Evan and Garage Heroes sent you, and you will get 0 discount. And you might get a sticker though. You never know. We've heard people graciously give stickers away. That's fine. All great companies. You've done well this year, sir. About as well as you could. I think you're 1 point away from the perfect season per GridLife rules. And looking forward to bumping into you in the paddock, not on the track, but into the paddock. And
no more bumping on the track.
No more bumping on track. Track bumping, no bueno. So it was great talking to you, and appreciate you spending your time and apparently giving us brake pads and rotors. So this is awesome.
Hell yeah. Hopefully they're Hawks, but if they're not, I won't tell.
I won't say, since it's sponsored by your friends at Hawk. No, they're not. But we've never used them before, so we're going to give them a test, and we'll test them out and report back. You never know.
Cool. Good luck. I'm glad it was beneficial. It was a little give and take.
That's right.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Yeah. Sorry for being so long-winded, but thank you.
Oh, it's fine. I know you're like, I don't have much to say, and I'm like, you got a lot to say, sir. So the details are what people like. So podcasts are long form, and we went long. Perfect job. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Have a great night.